true scary stories for sleep. Welcome to the Midnight Echoes. Before we dive into tonight's stories, I'd love to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Drop a comment below. It's always fascinating to see where our viewers are tuning in from. If you enjoy the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get comfortable, unwind, and prepare for tonight's eerie adventures. The road trip began with the thrill of adventure and the promise of new memories. We packed our bags, fueled up the car, and hit the open road. The early morning sun bathed everything in a warm glow, and we felt invincible. But the tranquility of the journey quickly took a chilling turn. As we cruised down a deserted highway, a rusty, ominous truck appeared in our rear-view mirror, and that's when the eeriness set in. First, we thought it was just another vehicle sharing the road, but it didn't take long to realize something was off. Truck's headlights bore into us, and its engine roared like a beast. Every attempt to speed up or slow down was mirrored perfectly. My heart pounded in my chest, and I could feel the tension creeping in, like a haunting shadow. We knew we had to lose the truck, but it seemed intent on following us to the ends of the earth. We decided to make a quick stop at a gas station, hoping to shake our pursuer. The neon lights flickered, casting eerie shadows around the deserted pumps. We pulled in, and the truck sped past, disappearing into the darkness. A brief sigh of relief washed over us, but it was short-lived. As I filled the tank, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The atmosphere was thick with unease. Back on the road, we felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe we'd left the nightmare behind. But within minutes, the truck reappeared, its headlights piercing through the rearview mirror. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped in a terrifying game of cat and mouse. Every turn and twist in the road seemed futile, as the menacing truck stayed right on our tail. The fear was palpable, and we knew we had to outsmart it. The narrow, winding road led us through a dense forest, where the trees closed in like an ominous tunnel. Our desperation grew as the truck's headlights loomed closer. It felt like the walls were closing in on us. Escape seemed impossible. Then, out of nowhere, a deer darted across the road. We swerved to avoid it, and the truck did the same, giving us a fleeting chance. We took it, racing down a hidden side road. The side road led us to an old, abandoned gas station, shrouded in darkness. We parked the car and killed the lights, hoping the truck would pass us by. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of the truck's engine. Minutes felt like hours as we held our breath, praying we wouldn't be discovered. Just when we thought we were safe, the truck's headlights appeared, illuminating the eerie surroundings. We had to act fast. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering our location and the terrifying ordeal we were facing. The operator assured us that help was on the way. We knew we had to survive until then. The truck circled the gas station, its engine growling like a predator hunting its prey. We hid behind the counter, clutching each other as the minutes dragged on. The sense of dread was suffocating. Finally, the sound of sirens pierced the night. The truck's engine roared one last time, or speeding away into the darkness. Relief washed over us as the police arrived, their flashing lights a beacon of safety. We recounted our harrowing experience, fear still fresh in our minds. The officers assured us they'd find the truck. We knew we'd never forget the chilling encounter. It had left an indelible mark on our souls. As we continued our road trip the next day, the landscape seemed different, the sun less bright. The sense of freedom we'd felt was replaced by a haunting awareness of the dangers that lurked on the open road. The experience had changed us, making us more cautious, more vigilant, but it also bonded us in a way we hadn't anticipated. We had faced a nightmare together and emerged stronger for it. Every road trip since has been shadowed by that eerie memory, the feeling of being stalked by an unseen menace. Yet, it also serves as a reminder of our resilience and the power of sticking together in the face of fear. The open road still calls to us, but we now travel with a heightened sense of awareness. And every time we pass a gas station, we can't help but glance over our shoulders, just in case. The Louisiana Bayou, with its lush green beauty, promised an idyllic fishing trip for my friends and me. We loaded up the boat with gear, eager for a peaceful escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. The water was calm, and the air was thick with the scent of cypress trees and moss. Our guide, a local named Marcus, seemed friendly enough, the deep knowledge of the bayou's hidden gems. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the atmosphere turned chilling. Marcus's demeanor shifted from welcoming to unsettling. His eyes, once warm, now held a haunting glint. He steered the boat deeper into the bayou, far from familiar territory. The eerie silence was broken only by the distant calls of wildlife, adding to the sense of isolation. We exchanged uneasy glances, the excitement of the day giving way to a growing sense of dread. Something was wrong, but we were too far in to turn back now. As darkness enveloped us, Marcus began telling stories of old bayou legends, tales of spirits and sacrifices that sent shivers down our spine. His voice took on a sinister tone, and the shadows cast by the boat's lantern danced menacingly around us. We laughed nervously, trying to shake off the eerie feeling. But the laughter died quickly when Marcus's stories turned personal, describing rituals he claimed to have witnessed firsthand. Our unease turned to fear when Marcus stopped the boat at a secluded spot, surrounded by dense, twisted trees. He insisted this was the best fishing spot, but his intentions felt far from genuine. The air was thick with tension as he handed us fishing rods, his gaze never leaving us. My heart pounded, and I could see the same fear mirrored in my friend's eyes. We were trapped, far from help, with a man who seemed increasingly unstable. Then, Marcus pulled out a large, rusted knife, claiming it was for cutting bait. But his menacing grin told a different story. The sight of the blade sent a chill down my spine. Panic surged through me as I realized we needed to get out of there, fast. We tried to play along, acting calm while planning our escape. But Marcus seemed to sense our fear, his demeanor growing more threatening by the minute. In a sudden, horrifying move, Marcus grabbed one of my friends and held the knife to his throat. He spoke of sacrifices to the spirits of the bayou, eyes wild with a chilling intensity. We were frozen in fear, unsure of how to react without escalating the situation. The air was thick with tension, and every second felt like an eternity. The realization that we were in real danger hit us like a tidal wave. Desperation fueled our actions. One friend lunged at Marcus, knocking the knife from his hand while another tackled him to the ground. The struggle was intense, the eerie quiet of the bayou, punctuated by our shouts and the sounds of the scuffle. We managed to subdue Marcus, tying him up with fishing line. Our hands shook with adrenaline and fear as we secured him, ensuring he couldn't harm us further. With Marcus restrained, we turned the boat around and navigated back through the dark, twisting waterway. Every rustle and splash seemed amplified in the stillness of the night, keeping our nerves on edge. The journey back felt interminable, the weight of what had almost happened pressing down on us. When we finally reached the dock, relief washed over us. The haunting memory of the night lingered. We reported Marcus to the authorities, who arrested him and launched an investigation into his activities. The bayou, once a place of beauty and adventure, now held a sinister undertone in our minds. The experience left us shaken, a chilling reminder of how quickly a seemingly harmless trip could turn into a nightmare. The bond between us grew stronger, forged in the crucible of fear and survival. Bayou has never felt the same since that night. The lush greenery and tranquil waters now conceal a haunting memory that surfaces every time we think about fishing trips. The experience taught us to be more cautious, trust our instincts, and to never take safety for granted. And though we've moved on, the eerie tales of the bayou and the nightmare we endured will forever be etched in our minds. Sailing through the Bermuda Triangle was supposed to be the highlight of our adventure. The sun was shining, the sea was calm, and our spirits were high. We were a tight-knit crew, excited to explore the mysteries of this infamous region. But as the horizon blurred with the onset of twilight, an eerie feeling settled over us. The air grew thick, and the once calm sea seemed to churn with a haunting energy. We spotted it just as the last rays of the sun disappeared, the silhouette of a massive, dilapidated ship emerging from the mist. At first, we thought it was a mirage. Closer we got, the more real it became. Its tattered sails flapped in the wind, and the hull groaned as if in pain. The sight was chilling, like something out of a ghost story. Curiosity and fear gripped us in equal measure as we approached the ghost ship. We decided to investigate despite the growing sense of dread. As we boarded the abandoned vessel, the eerie silence was broken only by the creaking of wood and the distant splash of waves. The ship was a relic from another time, with rotting timbers and rusted metal. Every step we took echoed through the empty corridors, heightening our unease. It felt as though we were trespassing on sacred, haunted ground. Our exploration led us to the captain's quarters, where we found a journal detailing the ship's last voyage. Entries were frantic, filled with tales of strange sightings and supernatural occurrences. The final entry spoke of a curse, warning anyone who dared to board the ship. Cold shiver ran down my spine as I read the haunting words. The sense of impending doom was palpable, and we knew we had to leave. As we made our way back to our boat, a thick fog rolled in, swallowing the ship and the surrounding sea. Visibility dropped to near zero, and panic set in. Eerie atmosphere grew more oppressive with each passing second. We could hear whispers in the wind, indistinct voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It felt like the ship was alive, its ghostly inhabitants watching our every move. We finally reached our boat, but the nightmare was far from over. The fog enveloped us, and the compass spun wildly, rendering navigation impossible. We were trapped in a supernatural vortex, with no sense of direction or time. The sea, once our ally, had turned against us. Desperation and fear clawed at our minds as we struggled to find a way out. The ghost ship's curse seemed to tighten its grip on us with every passing minute. Then, out of the fog, a glowing figure appeared on our deck. A spectral sailor with hollow eyes and a haunting presence. He spoke in a voice that echoed through the mist, warning us of the curse and urging us to leave before it was too late. His words were both a warning and a guide, offering us a chance to escape the Bermuda Triangle's grasp. We listened, our fear giving way to determination. Following the spectral sailor's instructions, we steered our boat towards a distant, barely visible light. The fog began to thin, and the whispers faded into the background. The compass steadied, pointing us in the right direction. Hope rekindled as we sailed towards the light, leaving the haunted waters behind. The sense of relief was overwhelming, but the haunting memories of the ghost ship lingered. We finally broke free from the Bermuda Triangle, the open sea stretching out before us like a promise of safety. The ordeal had shaken us to our core. Chilling reminder, the mysterious and deadly forces that lurk in the world. The experience bonded us even more, as we had faced a supernatural terror and survived. The ghost ship and its eerie crew would forever haunt our dreams, a chilling memory of the terror we escaped. As we docked at the nearest port, we were greeted with incredulous stares and hushed whispers. Our story spread quickly, and the locals treated us with a mix of awe and suspicion. The Bermuda Triangle's legends had claimed many, but we had returned to tell the tale. The adventure had changed us, deepening our respect for the sea and its secrets. We vowed to never forget the lessons learned and the horrors faced. Every time we set sail now, the memory of that chilling encounter stays with us. The open sea, once a symbol of freedom, now holds an eerie undertone. The ghost ship's curse had left its mark on us, a reminder of the supernatural forces that lie beyond our understanding. But it also taught us resilience and the strength of the human spirit. And though the Bermuda Triangle remains a mystery, we navigate its waters with caution and reverence. Picking up a hitchhiker seemed like a kind gesture at the time. It was a rainy evening and the roads were nearly deserted. I spotted him on the side of the road, drenched and shivering. His thumb was outstretched, and he wore a tattered jacket. Something about his appearance gave me pause, but my empathy overruled my caution. I pulled over and let him in, unaware that this decision would lead to a chilling ordeal. He introduced himself as Tom, his voice low and calm. As he settled into the passenger seat, a sense of unease crept in. The rain pounded against the windshield, and the wipers struggled to keep up. We made small talk, but his answers were vague and unsettling. He avoided eye contact, staring straight ahead with a haunting intensity. Air grew thick with tension, and I began to regret my decision. Miles passed, and the conversation died out, replaced by an eerie silence. Tom's presence felt increasingly menacing. I glanced over at him and noticed his hands clenching and unclenching, as if he was battling some inner turmoil. My grip on the steering wheel tightened, and I considered finding an excuse to drop him off. The road stretched on, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Suddenly, Tom's demeanor shifted. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a knife, his eyes cold and devoid of emotion. Panic surged through me as he demanded I keep driving and not make any sudden moves. My heart pounded in my chest, and 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. The situation had escalated from unsettling to life-threatening in an instant. I knew I had to stay calm and think of a way out. I tried to reason with him, my voice trembling with fear. He responded with chilling calmness, warning me not to test him. The rain continued to pour, adding to the eerie atmosphere. My mind raced, searching for a plan. Then, I remembered a gas station a few miles ahead. If I could just make it there, I might have a chance to escape. I feigned compliance, driving steadily towards the gas station, my pulse racing. As we approached the gas station, I saw a glimmer of hope. The bright lights and the presence of other people could be my salvation. I told Tom I needed to stop for gas, trying to keep my voice steady. He eyed me suspiciously, but agreed, keeping the knife pressed against his leg. I pulled into the station, and the moment the car stopped, I bolted out, screaming for help. The station attendant and a few customers rushed over, their faces filled with concern. Tom tried to flee. The quick response of the bystanders thwarted his escape. They pinned him down until the police arrived. The ordeal had left me shaken to the core, my heart still racing with the adrenaline of the encounter. The authorities took Tom into custody, and I recounted the chilling events of the evening. The rain had finally stopped. The sense of dread lingered. In the days that followed, I struggled to shake off the haunting memory. The simple act of picking up a hitchhiker had turned into a nightmarish experience. The thought of what could have happened sent shivers down my spine. I realized how close I had come to a far worse outcome, and the realization was both sobering and terrifying. It changed my perspective on kindness and caution forever. The experience left a lasting impact on me. I became more vigilant, more aware of the potential dangers that lurk behind seemingly innocent situations. The memory of Tom and that rainy night serves as a chilling reminder of the unpredictability of human nature. It's a story I share with others, not to instill fear, but to encourage caution and awareness. The road can be a dangerous place, and sometimes a kind gesture can lead to a haunting encounter. Despite the terror of that night, I continue to drive those same roads. The rain no longer holds the same appeal. I am wary of picking up strangers. The open road, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, now carries an eerie undertone. The experience has made me more resilient, more cautious, and more appreciative of the safety and security I often took for granted. And every time I pass a hitchhiker, I can't help but feel a chilling sense of déjà vu. The memory of that night will forever be etched in my mind. It's a haunting tale of survival, a stark reminder of the thin line between kindness and danger. I learned the hard way that not everyone can be trusted, and that sometimes the best intentions can lead to the most chilling encounters. But I also learned about the strength of the human spirit and the importance of staying vigilant, no matter how kind-hearted one may be. The lake had always been our sanctuary, a place where my partner and I could escape the chaos of daily life. We loved the tranquility of the water, the way the sun shimmered on its surface, and the sense of peace it brought us. That afternoon was no different. We set out in our small boat, eager to enjoy a quiet day of fishing and relaxation. Little did we know, chilling adventure awaited us. As we drifted towards the center of the lake, we noticed another boat in the distance. First, It seemed innocuous, just another couple enjoying the serene environment. But soon, it became clear they had other intentions. The boat began to follow us, maintaining a distance that was close enough to be unsettling. An eerie feeling settled over us, and we exchanged worried glances, unsure of what to do next. We tried to ignore them, hoping they would lose interest and leave us alone. But the boat continued to shadow us, matching our every move. The atmosphere grew thick with tension, and the once peaceful lake now felt menacing. The other boat's occupants were obscured by shadows, adding to the sense of dread. Every attempt to steer away was mirrored, and the realization that we were being pursued set in, sending chills down our spines. Desperation crept in as we realized we couldn't outmaneuver them. The pursuit intensified, and the other boat began to close the distance. Panic surged through us, and we decided to head for the nearest shore. The chase became a nightmarish game of cat and mouse, with our tiny boat struggling to stay ahead. The sound of their engine grew louder, and the fear of being caught was overwhelming. As we neared the shore, a dense fog began to roll in, cloaking the lake in an eerie mist. Visibility dropped, and the other boat seemed to vanish into the haze. We took the opportunity to hide among the reeds, hoping the fog would mask our location. The silence was deafening, broken only by our hushed breaths and the gentle lapping of water. We listened intently, trying to determine if they were still searching for us. Minutes felt like hours as we remained hidden, fog creating a surreal, haunting atmosphere. Every rustle and splash made us jump, our nerves frayed from the relentless pursuit. Then, through the mist, we heard the other boat's engine starting up again. Our hearts sank as the sound grew closer. They were still looking for us, and the sense of imminent danger returned with full force. Just when it seemed they would find us, engine noise faded away. We waited, hardly daring to breathe, until we were sure they had given up. Fog began to lift, and we cautiously made our way back to the center of the lake, constantly looking over our shoulders. The sense of relief was tempered by the haunting memory of the chase. We decided to head back to the dock, our peaceful day shattered by the terrifying ordeal. As we approached the dock, we saw the other boat tied up nearby, its occupants nowhere in sight. Chilling thought crossed our minds. What if they were waiting for us on land? We quickly secured our boat and made our way to the parking lot, scanning the area for any signs of them. Fear of another encounter drove us to move swiftly, our eyes darting around for any hint of danger. Back in the safety of our car, we took a moment, reflected ourselves. The day that had started with the promise of relaxation had turned into a nightmare. The lake, once our haven, now held a sinister undertone. We reported the incident to the local authorities, promised to investigate. The experience had left us shaken, chilling reminder of how quickly a serene setting could turn into a scene from a horror movie. In the days that followed, the haunting memories of that pursuit lingered. We found ourselves more cautious, more aware of our surroundings whenever we visited the lake. The tranquility we once found there was tainted by the fear of what had happened. Yet it also brought us closer together, our bonds strengthened by the shared experience of facing danger and surviving it. The lake remains a place we visit, with a newfound vigilance. Every ripple in the water, every distant boat, serves as a reminder of that eerie day. We've learned to appreciate the peaceful moments more, knowing how easily they can be disrupted. And though the memory of that pursuit still chills us, it has also taught us resilience and the importance of staying aware and prepared for anything. Solo camping had always been my way of escaping the hustle and bustle of city life. The idea of spending a night alone in the woods, surrounded by nature, was both thrilling and calming. I packed my gear and set off for my favorite secluded spot, deep in the forest. The day was perfect, the sun shining through the trees and birds chirping overhead. Little did I know, a chilling adventure awaited me that night. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest took on an eerie quality. The once comforting sounds of nature now felt unsettling. I set up my tent and started a small campfire, hoping the flickering flames would keep the darkness at bay. The crackling of the fire was soothing, but an underlying sense of dread began to creep in. Every rustle in the bushes, every snap of a twig, seemed amplified in the quiet night. I tried to brush off the feeling, attributing it to my overactive imagination. But as the night grew darker, the sense of being watched became undeniable. I'd feel eyes on me, an eerie presence lurking just beyond the firelight. My heart raced as I scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of movement. The forest, once my sanctuary, now felt like a haunted maze, and I was its prey. Unable to shake the fear, I decided to retreat into my tent, hoping the thin fabric would provide some semblance of safety. I zipped up the entrance and lay down, straining to hear any sounds over the pounding of my heart. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl. Just as I began to relax, I heard footsteps outside my tent, slow and deliberate. A chilling sense of terror washed over me. I held my breath, too scared to move. The footsteps grew closer, stopping just outside the tent. I could see the shadow of a figure through the fabric, tall and menacing. My mind raced with possibility. Was it an animal or something far more sinister? The seconds felt like hours as I waited for whatever was outside to make its move. The tension was unbearable, and I knew I had to do something. Summoning all my courage, I grabbed a flashlight and unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. The beam of light cut through the darkness, but there was no one there. The relief was short-lived, as the eerie feeling of being watched persisted. I stepped out of the tent, my flashlight scanning the surrounding trees. The forest was silent, too silent, as if it were holding its breath. I decided to stoke the campfire, hoping the flames would keep any potential threats at bay. As I gathered more wood, I noticed something chilling. A series of footprints leading away from my campsite. They were fresh and too large to be an animal's. My pulse quickened as I realized someone had been watching me. I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I had to leave before they came back. Packing up my gear as quickly and quietly as possible, I extinguished the fire and started hiking back towards my car. The path was shrouded in darkness, and every step felt like a gamble. My flashlight flickered, adding to the eerie atmosphere. I could hear my own breathing, loud and ragged, and every now and then the snap of a twig would send my heart racing. The sense of being followed was overwhelming. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached my car. The relief was immense as I locked the doors and started the engine. The drive back was a blur, my mind replaying the chilling events of the night. Once home, I couldn't shake the haunting feeling of being watched. Forest, my place of solace, turned into a place of terror. The experience had left a deep mark on me. In the weeks that followed, the memory of that night haunted me. I became more cautious, more aware of my surroundings. The idea of solo camping no longer held the same appeal. The woods, once a place of peace, were now a reminder of the unknown dangers that lurk in the darkness. Yet, it also taught me the importance of preparedness and the strength of my own instincts. The chilling events of that night have made me more resilient and cautious. While I still enjoy the beauty of nature, I now approach it with a heightened sense of awareness. The experience serves as a haunting reminder how quickly a peaceful night can turn into a nightmare. And every time I think of camping, I can't help but remember the eerie presence that lurked just beyond the firelight. Driving through the desert at night had always been an exhilarating experience for me. The vast, open expanse, the clear night sky filled with stars, and the quiet solitude were all part of the adventure. On this particular night, I was making my way through a stretch of highway that cut through the heart of the desert. The headlights of my car carved a path through the darkness, and the radio played softly in the background. It felt peaceful, but that peace was soon shattered. I first noticed the truck in my rearview mirror, its headlights appearing out of nowhere. At first, I thought nothing of it, assuming it was just another traveler on this lonely road. But as the minutes passed, the truck drew closer, its presence becoming increasingly menacing. The eerie feeling of being followed crept over me, and I began to wonder why the truck was maintaining such a close distance. The truck's headlights loomed larger in my rearview mirror, casting an eerie glow inside my car. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself it was just a coincidence. But the driver matched my speed with unsettling precision, mirroring every acceleration and deceleration. The vast desert landscape offered no escape, and the sense of being hunted intensified with each passing mile. My heart raced as the reality of the situation sank in. In a desperate attempt to lose the truck, I took the next exit, a narrow, winding road that led deeper into the desert. The truck followed, its headlights unwavering. The isolation of the desert now felt suffocating, the darkness pressing in on all sides. I could feel the tension mounting, each twist and turn of the road heightening my fear. The truck's persistence was chilling, and I knew I had to find a way to escape. As the road narrowed, I spotted a faint light in the distance, an old gas station, a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. I floored the gas pedal, praying the truck would give up the chase. The gas station appeared closer, its neon sign flickering in the darkness. Relief washed over me as I pulled in, truck finally falling back. I parked and rushed inside, my heart pounding in my chest. The eerie silence of the desert was replaced by the fluorescent hum of the gas station lights. The attendant, an older man with a weathered face, noticed my distress and asked if everything was all right. I explained the situation, my voice trembling with fear. He assured me that I was safe here and offered me a seat behind the counter. I watched through the window as the truck idled at the entrance, its headlights glaring like predatory eyes. The sense of being hunted had not dissipated, and I felt trapped. Minutes felt like hours as I waited, hoping the truck would leave. The gas station, once a place of refuge, now felt like a prison. The attendant called the local sheriff, explaining the situation. The truck eventually pulled away, disappearing into the darkness of the desert. The sense of relief was overwhelming, but the haunting fear lingered. The sheriff arrived, took my statement, and assured me they would patrol the area. Driving back, the vast expanse of the desert felt different. The open road, once a symbol of freedom, now seemed eerie and ominous. The memory of the truck's headlights, the relentless pursuit, and the feeling of being stalked haunted me. Every shadow and every distant light made my heart race, a chilling reminder of the night's events. I couldn't shake the fear that the truck might return. In the days that followed, the desert no longer held the same allure. The experience had left a mark on me, a chilling reminder of how quickly an adventure could turn into a nightmare. I became more cautious, more aware of my surroundings. The open road, once inviting, now seemed fraught with hidden dangers. The desert had shown me its darker side, and I couldn't forget it. Despite the terror of that night, I continued to drive those desert highways. The vastness, the solitude, and the beauty of the desert still called to me. But now, I traveled with a heightened sense of awareness, always on guard. The memory of the desert stalker stayed with me, a haunting tale that I would carry forever. It had taught me resilience and the importance of trust in my instinct. Every journey through the desert now carries a hint of that night. Stars, the open road, and the silence all hold a different meaning. The experience had changed me, deepening my respect for the vast, untamed landscape. The chilling encounter had tested my courage and my resolve, and while it had left me shaken, it had also made me stronger. The desert, with all its beauty and danger, would always be a part of me. Being a long-haul trucker often meant discovering hidden parts of the country and encountering all kinds of people. One evening, after hours of driving through desolate stretches of highway, I pulled into a mechanic shop that had been recommended by another driver. The place looked run down, but I needed a tune-up and a rest. As I stepped out of my truck, air felt thick with a sense of unease, but I brushed it off as fatigue. The mechanic, a burly man with grease-stained overalls, greeted me with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. He offered to take a look at my truck, and I decided to wait in the small, dimly lit office. The place was eerily quiet. Every creak and groan of the old building seemed amplified in the stillness. I settled into a worn-out chair, trying to relax, but an unsettling feeling gnawed at me. As I waited, I noticed something peculiar. Faint, metallic smell that seemed out of place. Curiosity piqued, I decided to explore the back of the shop. I moved cautiously, my footsteps barely making a sound on the concrete floor. The further I went, the stronger the smell became. I found myself in a poorly lit hallway, and my heart began to race. The place had an eerie, almost haunting atmosphere. I stumbled upon a locked door, and, driven by an inexplicable urge, looked around for a way to open it. Finding a set of keys on a nearby hook, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. What I saw sent a chill down my spine. Medical equipment, surgical tools, and coolers labeled with organs. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I had uncovered an illegal organ trafficking operation. My blood ran cold, and I knew I had to get out of there fast. As I turned to leave, I heard footsteps approaching. Panic surged through me, and I quickly hid behind a stack of crates. The burly mechanic entered the room, talking in hushed tones to someone on his phone. His words were chilling, discussing upcoming deliveries and potential buyers. My mind raced, trying to figure out how to escape without being detected. The fear was overwhelming, but I had to stay calm and think clearly. Once the mechanic left, I seized my chance. Moving as silently as possible, I slipped out of the room and made my way back to the office. The eerie quiet of the shop now felt suffocating, and every second felt like an eternity. I reached my truck, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life, and I sped out of there, the sense of danger still pressing heavily on me. I drove straight to the nearest police station, my mind racing with the night's chilling discoveries. The authorities took my report seriously and assured me they would investigate immediately. The relief of being safe was tempered by the haunting realization of how close I had come to becoming another victim. The dark world of organ trafficking, something I had only heard about in news stories, had nearly ensnared me. In the days that followed, the memory of that night lingered. The open road, once a symbol of freedom, now felt shadowed by the lurking dangers. The mechanic shop, with its eerie atmosphere and chilling secrets, haunted my thoughts. I found myself more vigilant, more cautious with every stop I made. The experience had opened my eyes to the hidden dangers that could be lurking behind a seemingly innocuous facade. Despite the terror of that night, I continued my long-haul journeys. Each trip carried a hint of the haunting memories, but it also made me more resilient. The road had its dangers, but it also had its rewards. I had learned to trust my instincts and to be wary of places that didn't feel right. The experience had changed me, making me more aware and more appreciative of the safety I often took for granted. The chilling encounter at the mechanic shop remains a stark reminder of the dark underbelly of the world. It taught me the importance of vigilance and the strength of the human spirit to overcome fear. While the open road still calls to me, I now travel with a heightened sense of awareness. Every stop, every new place, is approached with caution. Memory of that night never far from my mind. Driving through the night had always been a peaceful escape for me. The hum of the engine, the open road, and the soft glow of the dashboard lights created a calming atmosphere. On one particularly long haul, I found myself on a lonely stretch of highway with only the stars and my thoughts for company. To keep myself awake, I scanned through the radio stations until I stumbled upon a voice that was both captivating and eerie. The radio show host had a hypnotic, almost otherworldly tone. He spoke about the mysteries of the universe, secret societies, and the power of the mind. His voice was soothing, yet there was something chilling about it. Couldn't turn it off. As I listened, a strange sense of calm washed over me, lulling me into a trance-like state. The road seemed to blur, and time lost its meaning. The host's words felt like they were sinking into my subconscious. Hours passed, or maybe just minutes. I couldn't tell. The host began giving instructions, suggesting actions that felt both compelling and unsettling. He spoke of freeing oneself from the mundane and embracing a higher purpose, but his words were laced with darker undertone. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I fought to stay in control. The sense of unease grew, but the hypnotic pull of his voice was overpowering. Suddenly, the host mentioned a location, a deserted rest stop just off the highway. He described it in such detail that I felt an irresistible urge to find it. Against my better judgment, I followed his directions, the sense of dread overshadowed by an inexplicable need to obey. The rest stop appeared out of the darkness, exactly as he had described it. My heart pounded as I pulled in, the eerie silence of the place sending chills down my spine. I stepped out of the truck, old night air snapping me back to reality for a moment. The rest stop was abandoned, structures worn and decayed. The only light came from a flickering street lamp, casting haunting shadows. The radio host's voice still echoed in my mind, urging me to explore. I knew I should leave, but my feet moved on their own, drawn towards the dilapidated building. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with an unsettling presence. The air was musty, and the floorboards creaked under my weight. I felt like I was being watched, the shadows dancing on the walls. The host's voice, now just a whisper in my mind, guided me through the dark corridors. Each step felt like a step closer to something sinister. The sense of impending doom was overwhelming, but I couldn't stop. In the main room, I found an old, dusty radio on a table. It was identical to the one I had in my truck. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. The radio show was a trap, a way to lure unsuspecting travelers. My pulse quickened, and I knew I had to get out. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as I turned to leave. The door creaked open slowly, and I felt a cold breeze brush past me, sending shivers down my spine. Back in the truck, I turned off the radio, breaking free from the hypnotic spell. The silence was deafening, but it was a relief. My hands trembled as I started the engine, desperate to put distance between myself and that eerie rest stop. The road felt like a lifeline, pulling me away from the haunting experience. I drove until the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, the sense of dread gradually lifting. The encounter left me shaken, the memory of the hypnotic voice and the eerie rest stop lingering in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something truly sinister. Open road, once a source of freedom, now held an unsettling edge. I found myself more cautious, wary of the voices that came through the radio. The experience had changed me, deepening my awareness of the hidden dangers that lurk in the night. In the days that followed, I shared my story with other truckers. Some listened with skepticism, while others recounted their own eerie encounters. The chilling realization that there might be more to the world than meets the eye took root. The hypnotic radio show became a ghostly legend among us, cautionary tale of the unknown. I learned to trust my instincts and to be wary of the seemingly harmless. The road still calls to me, but with a newfound respect for its mysteries. Each journey carries the memory of that night, a haunting reminder of the hypnotic voice that almost led me to disaster. It has made me more resilient, more attuned to the subtle signs of danger. The chilling experience serves as a reminder of the thin line between reality and the unknown, and the importance of staying vigilant on the open road. Running had always been my escape from the stresses of everyday life. Feeling of the wind against my face and the rhythm of my footsteps on the trail gave me a sense of freedom. One evening, I decided to take a different route through a wooded area, hoping for a bit of adventure. The sun was setting, casting an eerie glow over the trees. The path seemed inviting, but little did I know, a chilling experience awaited me. As I ran deeper into the woods, the path became less familiar. Tall trees closed in around me, and the air grew colder. I glanced at my watch and realized I had been running longer than intended. The sense of adventure quickly turned to unease. The trail I was following seemed to disappear, and I found myself surrounded by dense forest. The once calming atmosphere now felt menacing, and I began to worry. I tried to retrace my steps, but every turn looked the same. The shadows grew longer, and the forest seemed to close in on me. Panic set in as I realized I was lost. My heart pounded and my breath quickened. I stopped to gather my thoughts, hoping to find a landmark or a familiar sign. The eerie silence of the woods was broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant call of an owl. The sense of being watched crept over me, sending chills down my spine. As I continued to search for a way out, I stumbled upon an old, overgrown path. Desperate for any sign of civilization, I followed it, hoping it would lead me back to safety. The path twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the forest. Air grew thick with fog, and visibility dropped. Every step felt like a gamble, and the sense of being watched intensified. My imagination ran wild with thoughts of what could be lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate, and getting closer. Fear surged through me, and I quickened my pace. Footsteps matched mine, never missing a beat. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it an animal, or something more sinister? I glanced over my shoulder but saw nothing. The eerie feeling of being pursued was overwhelming, and I knew I had to keep moving. The path led me to a clearing with an old, abandoned cabin in the center. The sight of it was both a relief and a cause for concern. The cabin looked like it hadn't been used in years, its windows boarded up and the door hanging off its hinges. I hesitated for a moment, but the sound of footsteps behind me pushed me forward. I approached the cabin, hoping to find a place to hide, or better yet, a way to call for help. Inside, the cabin was dark and musty. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and the floor was covered in dust. The eerie atmosphere was suffocating, but it felt safer than being out in the open. I found an old lantern and lit it, flickering light casting haunting shadows on the walls. Took a deep breath and tried to calm my racing heart. The sense of being watched had not diminished, and every creak of the cabin sent shiver. As I searched the cabin, I found an old, tattered map of the forest. It was faded and difficult to read, but it gave me a glimmer of hope. I studied it carefully, trying to figure out my location and the best route back to safety. The sound of footsteps outside grew louder, and I knew I had to act fast. The eerie feeling of being pursued was suffocating, and I couldn't shake the sense of impending danger. I decided to make a run for it, using the map as my guide. I took one last look around the cabin, then bolted out the door, heading in the direction I hoped would lead me home. Footsteps followed, relentless and unnerving. My breath came in ragged gasps as I pushed myself to run faster. The forest seemed to stretch on forever, the trees closing in around me. The sense of being hunted was overpowering, but I refused to give up. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw the edge of the forest. The sight of the open road was a beacon of hope. I sprinted towards it, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and relief. As I burst out of the woods, the footsteps ceased, and the eerie feeling lifted. I collapsed on the side of the road, gasping for breath. The sense of safety was overwhelming. A haunting memory of the pursuit lingered. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The forest, once a place of solace, now held a sinister undertone. I became more cautious, more aware of my surroundings. The experience had left a mark on me, a chilling reminder of the unknown dangers that can lurk in the most unexpected places. It taught me the importance of vigilance and trusting my instincts. The memory of that night in the woods stays with me, a haunting tale of survival and resilience. It has made me more cautious, but also more appreciative of the safety and security I often take for granted. Every run through the woods now carries a hint of that night, a reminder to stay alert and be prepared for anything. The chilling experience serves as a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of perseverance. Hitchhiking across Europe had always been a dream of mine. The freedom of the open road, meeting new people, and the thrill of adventure were all part of the allure. One sunny morning, I found myself on the outskirts of a picturesque village, thumb out, waiting for a ride. A battered old car pulled over, and the driver, an older man with a friendly smile, offered me a lift. Little did I know, this ride would soon turn into a chilling nightmare. The journey started off pleasant enough. The driver, who introduced himself as Klaus, seemed friendly and chatty. We exchanged stories, and I felt at ease. But as we drove further into the countryside, Klaus's demeanor changed. His friendly smile faded, replaced by a haunting intensity in his eyes. The conversation grew more personal, and his questions became unsettling. My sense of unease grew with each passing mile. As we entered a remote, forested area, Klaus's behavior became more erratic. He started driving faster, ignoring my nervous attempts to steer the conversation back to safer topics. The trees closed in around us, casting eerie shadows on the road. I could feel the tension building, and my heart raced with fear. I knew I had to find a way out, but we were miles from the nearest town. The once charming ride had taken a sinister turn. Klaus suddenly pulled over to the side of the road, his face twisted with a menacing grin. He locked the doors and turned to me, his intentions now terrifyingly clear. My mind raced, searching for a way to escape. Just as he lunged towards me, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance. I seized the moment, screaming for help and banging on the window. The approaching car slowed down, and I saw a group of people inside, their faces filled with concern. The car skidded to a halt, and the passengers jumped out, rushing to my aid. Klaus, realizing he was outnumbered, fumbled with the locks, but it was too late. The Good Samaritans pried the door open and pulled me out, shielding me from Klaus's grasp. My heart was pounding, and I could barely catch my breath. The eerie silence of the forest was replaced by the comforting sounds of my rescuers' voices, assuring me I was safe. The police arrived shortly after, arresting Klaus and taking our statements. The officers commended the quick actions of my rescuers who had likely saved my life. As I sat in the back of the patrol car, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. The open road, once a symbol of freedom and adventure, now held a haunting memory of terror. I knew I had narrowly escaped a horrifying fate. In the days that followed, the experience left me shaken. I couldn't shake the image of Klaus's menacing grin and the feeling of being trapped. The once exhilarating idea of hitchhiking now seemed fraught with danger. But I also felt a deep gratitude for the kindness of strangers who had come to my rescue. Their bravery had restored my faith in humanity, even in the face of such a chilling encounter. Despite the trauma, I continued my journey across Europe, but with a newfound caution. The memory of that night remained with me, a constant reminder to trust my instincts and be wary of the unknown. I shared my story with fellow travelers, hoping to raise awareness and encourage vigilance. The open road still called to me, but I approached it with a heightened sense of awareness and respect for the potential dangers. The experience taught me valuable lessons about trust and the human spirit. It showed me that even in the darkest moments, there can be light. The haunting memory of that night served as a reminder of both the risks and rewards of travel. It made me more resilient and more appreciative of the kindness of strangers. And though the road still held its mysteries, I was better prepared to face them. Every journey now carries a hint of that night, a reminder to stay alert and trust my instinct. The open road, with all its beauty and unpredictability, continues to be a source of adventure. But the chilling encounter with Klaus remains etched in my memory, a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of perseverance. It's a story I carry with me, part of my journey and a lesson in survival. Exploring abandoned places had always been a thrill for my friends and me. That summer, we decided to venture into an old mine shaft we'd heard about, tucked away in the hills. The air was cool and the sky overcast as we made our way to the entrance. Our excitement tinged with a sense of foreboding. The mine's dark maw loomed before us, and with flashlights in hand, we stepped into the chilling darkness, unaware of the horrors that awaited us. The mine was a labyrinth of tunnels, each one more eerie than the last. Our voices echoed off the damp walls, creating an unsettling ambience. As we ventured deeper, the light from the entrance faded, replaced by the flickering beams of our flashlight. The air grew colder, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the distant drip of water. Despite the eerie atmosphere, we pressed on, driven by curiosity and a thirst for adventure. We stumbled upon an old elevator shaft, its rusted doors partially open. Intrigued, we peered inside and decided to explore further. The shaft led us to a lower level, even more decayed and haunting. The walls were lined with abandoned equipment and the remnants of a bygone era. It felt like stepping back in time. The sense of unease grew stronger. Something about this place felt wrong, as if we were intruding on a forbidden secret. As we turned a corner, we heard a faint noise, a muffled cry for help. Our hearts raced as we followed the sound, leading us to a locked metal door. We pried it open and found a woman, bound and gagged, eyes wide with fear. She had been kidnapped and left to die in the mine. The realization of what we had stumbled upon was chilling. We quickly freed her, our minds racing with thoughts of who had done this and if they were still nearby. With the woman in tow, we hurried back towards the entrance, the weight of our discovery pressing heavily on us. The once thrilling exploration had turned into a desperate race against time. As we navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, we heard footsteps behind us. Heavy, deliberate, and getting closer. Panic set in, and we quickened our pace, the sense of being hunted sending chills down our spine. We emerged into a large chamber, our flashlights flickering as we scanned for an exit. Footsteps grew louder, echoing ominously off the walls. In a moment of clarity, we spotted a narrow passageway and squeezed through, hoping it would lead us to safety. The woman clung to us, fear palpable. The passage was tight and claustrophobic. We pressed on, driven by the urgency to escape. The passage opened into another tunnel, and we saw a faint light ahead. Relief washed over us as we realized we were close to the exit. But just as we thought we were safe, a group of men appeared, blocking our path. Their expressions were menacing, and it was clear they were the captors. The situation seemed hopeless. Eerie darkness of the mine, now a backdrop to our impending doom. Summoning every ounce of courage, we confronted the men, determined to protect the woman and ourselves. Tense standoff ensued, our voices echoing in the haunting silence. Just as things seemed about to turn violent, a loud noise interrupted us, the sound of approaching footsteps. A group of local hikers, alerted by our earlier cries for help, come to investigate. Captors, realizing they were outnumbered, fled into the darkness. We rushed out of the mine, the fresh air a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere we had just escaped. The hikers called the authorities, and the woman was taken to safety. The police soon arrived, and an investigation was launched. The mine, once a place of mystery and adventure, was now a crime scene. The experience had left us shaken, the chilling events of the day etched into our memories. In the days that followed, we struggled to process what had happened. The sense of danger and the eerie atmosphere of the mine haunted our thoughts. We had set out in search of adventure and stumbled upon a terrifying reality. The experience had changed us, making us more cautious and aware of the hidden dangers in seemingly innocent places. The mine shaft, with its dark secrets, served as a reminder of the unpredictability of life. Every time we talk about that day, the memory of the chilling discovery and the desperate escape brings a sense of gratitude for our safety. It also serves as a reminder of the resilience and bravery we found within ourselves. The mine, once a symbol of adventure, now stands as a testament to the darker side of human nature. But it also highlights the power of courage and the importance of staying vigilant. Camping in the wilderness was supposed to be a relaxing escape from the daily grind. My friends and I had chosen a secluded spot deep in the forest, far from civilization. The days were filled with hiking and exploring, while the nights were spent around a campfire, sharing stories under the stars. One evening, as we sat by the fire, the sound of distant gunshots shattered the tranquility, sending chills down our spines. The gunshots were followed by the unmistakable sound of something large crashing through the underbrush. We exchanged worried glances, realizing that we were not alone. Our peaceful retreat had been invaded by poachers. The realization was chilling, and a sense of urgency took hold. We knew we had to get out of there, but the darkness and unfamiliar terrain made it a daunting task. Eerie sounds of the forest now seemed more menacing. We quickly packed up our campsite, extinguishing the fire and gathering our belongings. The sense of danger was palpable, and we moved as silently as possible. The moon provided little light, casting haunting shadows on the forest floor. Every rustle and snap of a twig sent waves of fear through us. The poachers were getting closer, and we could hear their voices, rough and menacing. We needed to find a way to escape without being seen. As we navigated through the dense forest, we heard a low growl behind us. A group of poachers had set their dogs loose, and the animals were hot on our trail. Panic surged through us, and we quickened our pace, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. The dogs' barks echoed through the trees, growing louder with each passing moment. The once serene wilderness had transformed into a haunting maze, with danger lurking at every turn. We stumbled upon a narrow, rocky path that led to higher ground. The climb was steep and treacherous, but it offered a chance to escape the dogs. We scrambled up the rocks, our hearts pounding with fear and exertion. The sounds of the dogs and poachers grew fainter as we ascended, but the sense of urgency remained. We couldn't afford to stop or look back. The chilling reality of our situation drove us forward. At the top of the hill, we found a small cave, barely visible in the moonlight. It offered a temporary refuge, and we crawled inside, our bodies shaking with exhaustion and fear. The cave was damp and cold, but it felt like a sanctuary. We huddled together, trying to catch our breath and formulate a plan. The eerie silence was broken only by the distant howls of the dogs, reminding us that we were not yet safe. As dawn approached, the first light of day revealed a potential escape route. A narrow trail led away from the cave, winding through the forest and towards a nearby ranger station. We knew it was our best chance of survival. With renewed determination, we set off, keeping to the shadows and moving as quietly as possible. The forest, once a place of beauty, now felt like a gauntlet we had to navigate. We reached the ranger station just as the sun began to rise. The sight of the building was a beacon of hope, and we rushed towards it, our exhaustion temporarily forgotten. The rangers, alerted by our frantic approach, welcomed us inside and listened to our harrowing tale. They immediately radioed for backup, and a team was dispatched to apprehend the poachers. The sense of relief was overwhelming, but the haunting memories of the night lingered. The rangers assured us that the poachers would be caught and the area secured. We were grateful for their swift response and support. The experience had left us shaken, but also more aware of the dangers that can lurk in the wilderness. The forest, once a sanctuary, now held a haunting memory of survival. We had faced a terrifying ordeal and emerged stronger for it. In the days that followed, we reflected on our experience and the lessons learned. The bond between us had deepened, forged in the crucible of fear and survival. The chilling encounter with the poachers had tested our courage and resilience, and we had come through it together. The wilderness, with all its beauty and danger, would always be a part of our lives, but we would approach it with newfound respect and caution. Every time we venture into the forest now, the memory of that night is a reminder to stay vigilant and prepared. The experience has made us more appreciative of the beauty and unpredictability of nature. The chilling escape from the poachers serves as a testament to our strength and the power of teamwork. It's a story we share, not to frighten, but to inspire and remind others of the importance of staying safe and aware in the wild. Working as a night security guard at the mall had always been a quiet, uneventful job. The vast, empty corridors were usually silent, the only sounds being the hum of the HVAC system and the occasional distant creak of the building settling. One stormy night, however, the eerie calm was shattered. As I made my rounds, the power went out, plunging the mall into darkness. My flashlight cut through the gloom, casting haunting shadows on the walls. I headed towards the security office to check the backup generator and surveillance system. The storm raged outside, its howling winds and pounding rain adding to the sense of unease. Suddenly, I heard a faint noise, a window breaking, followed by hurried footsteps. My heart raced as I realized the mall had been breached. I switched on the backup power, bringing the security monitors back to life. What I saw sent chills down my spine. 3 masked men were moving through the mall, their flashlights darting around as they made their way to the jewelry store. I quickly called the police, but I knew it would take time for them to arrive. I had to do something to delay the intruders. With my knowledge of the mall's layout, I devised a plan. The adrenaline kicked in, and I steeled myself for what was to come. The eerie silence of the mall was now filled with the sense of impending danger. I moved swiftly, staying out of sight and using the back corridors to get ahead of the intruders. The mall was a labyrinth, and I knew every nook and cranny. As I neared the jewelry store, I set off a series of alarms in nearby shops, hoping to create confusion and slow them down. The loud blaring echoed through the mall, startling the intruders. I watched from a hidden vantage point as they hesitated, their plan momentarily disrupted. Taking advantage of their confusion, I activated the mall's automated security shutters, trapping the men in a small section of the mall. They pounded on the shutters, shouting in frustration. My heart raced, knowing I had bought some time but also realizing they were now desperate and dangerous. The storm outside continued to rage, its eerie sounds mixing with the intruders' frantic efforts to escape. I monitored their movements through the surveillance cameras, staying one step ahead. Using the mall's PA system, I issued warnings and false information, leading them to believe that the police were already inside. The psychological tactics worked, increasing their panic. The sense of control was empowering, but I knew the situation could turn deadly if they managed to break free. The tension was palpable, and I remained focused on keeping them contained. The police finally arrived, their flashing lights cutting through the darkness outside. I directed them to the trapped intruders, coordinating their movements through the surveillance system. Police entered the mall with tactical precision, surrounding the men and apprehending them without incident. The sense of relief was overwhelming as the intruders were led away in handcuffs. The mall, once a place of eerie silence and danger, was now filled with the reassuring presence of law enforcement. In the aftermath, the police praised my quick thinking and bravery. The mall management was equally grateful, commending me for protecting the property and ensuring the safety of everyone involved. The experience had left me shaken, but also proud of my actions. The eerie calm of the mall had been replaced by a sense of security and vigilance. I knew I had faced a real threat and come out on top. Following days were filled with debriefings and adjustments to the mall's security protocols. The chilling memory of the break-in lingered, a reminder of the unpredictable dangers that can arise even in the most familiar places. I continued my duties with a heightened sense of awareness, knowing that vigilance was key to preventing future incidents. The mall, once a quiet night job, had become a place where my skills and instincts were tested and proven. Every night as I walked the silent corridors, I couldn't help but recall the events of that stormy evening. The sense of pride and the haunting memory of the break-in were intertwined. The experience had made me more resilient and prepared for any challenge that might come my way. The mall, with its labyrinthine layout and eerie calm, was now a testament to the importance of readiness and quick thinking. The story of the mall break-in became a legend among the staff, a tale of bravery and quick action. It served as a reminder of the potential dangers that lurk in the shadows and the importance of staying vigilant. Chilling events of that night had forged a stronger, more united team, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And for me, it was a night that had transformed my quiet job into a thrilling and unforgettable experience. Halloween parties had always been my favorite, and this year, the invitation to a lavish mansion party was too tempting to resist. The mansion, perched on a hill and shrouded in mystery, was said to have a chilling history. As I approached the grand entrance, flickering jack-o'-lanterns and eerie decorations set the perfect tone for a night of fun and fright. Little did I know, the evening would take a terrifying turn. The interior of the mansion was a spectacle of Halloween splendor. Costumed guests mingled, laughter echoing through the ornate halls. I wandered from room to room, admiring the detailed decor and enjoying the spooky ambiance. The atmosphere was electric, but an undercurrent of unease lingered. The mansion's eerie history seemed to seep into the very walls, creating a haunting backdrop for the festivities. As the night progressed, I joined a group of guests in the grand ballroom. The chandeliers cast an eerie glow, and the music added to the haunting atmosphere. It was then that I noticed a peculiar group of individuals who seemed out of place. They were dressed in plain clothes, their eyes darting around suspiciously. My curiosity piqued. I kept an eye on them, sensing something was off. I decided to follow them discreetly, my heart pounding with both excitement and apprehension. They led me to a secluded part of the mansion, away from the main party. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to deepen. I hid behind a pillar, watching as they gathered in a small, dimly lit room. What I overheard sent chills down my spine. They were discussing a plan to drug and rob the guests. My mind raced as I realized the gravity of the situation. I had to warn the others, but I needed proof. Carefully, I crept closer, trying to capture their conversation on my phone. The room was filled with an eerie silence, broken only by their sinister whispers. Just as I thought I had enough evidence, one of them spotted me. Panic surged through me, and I turned to flee, but they were hot on my heels. I sprinted through the winding corridors, my heart pounding with fear. The once beautiful mansion now felt like a haunted maze, with danger lurking around every corner. I burst into the grand ballroom, shouting a warning to the guests. The music screeched to a halt, and all eyes turned to me. The intruders tried to blend in with the crowd, but I pointed them out, my voice trembling with urgency. The guests quickly realized the danger and began to back away from the suspect. Some brave souls stepped forward, ready to confront the intruders. The tension was palpable, and the room seemed to close in as a confrontation loomed. The eerie silence was broken by the sound of sirens approaching. Unbeknownst to me, someone had already called the police. The intruders, realizing they were cornered, tried to make a run for it. Police arrived just in time, apprehending the suspects before they could escape. The sense of relief was overwhelming. Chilling events of the night had left everyone shaken. The mansion, with its haunted history, had almost been the scene of a real-life horror. The guests gathered in the grand ballroom, their costumes now a stark contrast to the serious expressions on their faces. The party had taken a sinister turn, but we were safe. The police took our statements, and the suspects were led away in handcuffs. The mansion's eerie ambiance now felt even more pronounced, the night's events casting a shadow over the Halloween festivity. The guests, though shaken, were grateful for the timely intervention. The sense of camaraderie grew as we shared our experiences and comforted one another. The mansion, with its haunting history, had brought us together in an unexpected way. In the days that followed, the story of the Halloween Mansion mystery spread. The chilling events of the night became a topic of conversation, a reminder of how quickly fun can turn to fear. The mansion, once a place of festive celebration, now held a darker memory. The experience had left a mark on all of us, a lesson in vigilance and the unexpected dangers that can lurk even in the most joyous of occasions. Despite the terror of that night, the bond between the guests had strengthened. We stayed in touch, planning future gatherings, with a heightened sense of awareness. The mansion, with its eerie history, had taught us the importance of looking out for one another. The chilling Halloween party was a reminder of the thin line between revelry and danger, and the power of unity in the face of fear. Every Halloween since, the memory of that night lingers. Costumes, the decorations, and the laughter are now tinged with the haunting recollection of the mansion mystery. It's a story we share with new friends, a tale of bravery and quick thinking. The mansion, with its ghostly past, had given us an unforgettable experience and a lesson in resilience. And while the fear has faded, the camaraderie remains, a lasting bond forged in the face of terror. Traveling alone had always been my way of finding peace and quiet. One evening, after a long drive, I found myself in need of a place to stay. I stumbled upon a small, isolated motel off the beaten path. The neon sign flickered ominously, casting eerie shadows on the rundown building. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, exhaustion got the better of me, and I decided to check in for the night. Little did I know, a chilling encounter awaited me. The receptionist, a middle-aged man with a peculiar grin, handed me the key to room 13. The number itself felt like a bad omen, but I brushed off the thought. The room was musty and outdated, the dim lighting adding to its haunting vibe. As I unpacked, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant hum of the vending machine in the hallway. I decided to take a shower, hoping it would help me relax. The water was lukewarm, and the bathroom mirror was fogged up. As I wiped the steam away, I noticed something chilling. There was a message written in the condensation. "Get out now." My heart pounded, and a sense of dread washed over me. I quickly finished my shower, my mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. Eerie silence of the room now felt suffocating. Determined to find answers, I went back to the reception desk to question the receptionist. To my horror, the reception area was deserted. The unsettling grin of the receptionist seemed to linger in my mind. I felt a surge of panic and decided to return to my room and lock the door. The feeling of being watched intensified, and every creak and groan of the old building seemed amplified. The air was thick with an eerie tension. Back in my room, I noticed the door had a strange lock mechanism that seemed newly installed. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized I might be trapped. I checked the windows, but they were barred from the outside. The realization that I was stuck in this haunting place sent chills down my spine. I needed to find a way out, but the sense of dread was paralyzing. The shadows in the room seemed to move, creating an almost hypnotic effect. Suddenly, I heard footsteps outside my door, slow, deliberate, and menacing. My pulse quickened as I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. The footsteps continued, growing louder. I knew I had to escape. Gathering my courage, I decided to use the phone to call for help. But when I picked up the receiver, there was no dial tone. The line had been cut, and the sense of isolation deepened. I was alone and vulnerable in this eerie place. Desperation took over, and I decided to search the room for anything that could help me. Found a small, rusted screwdriver in the bedside drawer. Wasn't much, but it was something. As I tried to pry open the window bars, footsteps returned, this time accompanied by a chilling whisper. "You can't leave." My hands shook as I worked, eerie voice sending waves of terror through me. Finally, I managed to loosen one of the bars enough to squeeze through. The sense of urgency was overwhelming, and I didn't look back as I crawled out into the cold night. The motel, with its flickering neon sign, loomed behind me like a haunting specter. I ran to my car, my heart pounding with fear and relief. As I sped away, the eerie silhouette of the motel grew smaller in the rearview mirror. The sense of danger lingered. I drove straight to the nearest town and reported the incident to the local authority. They listened with skepticism, but agreed to investigate. The chilling experience had left me shaken, but I was grateful to have escaped. The isolated motel, with its eerie atmosphere and sinister secrets, was a place I would never forget. The memory of that night stayed with me, a haunting reminder of the dangers that can hide behind a seemingly innocuous facade. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The sense of unease lingered, even in the safety of my home. The experience had changed me, making me more cautious and aware of my surroundings. The open road, once a symbol of freedom, now held a darker undertone. The motel, with its chilling atmosphere, had left a permanent mark on my psyche. Every time I travel now, I choose my accommodations with great care. The haunting memory of that isolated motel serves as a reminder of the unexpected dangers that can lurk in the most unlikely places. The experience taught me the importance of trust in my instincts and the need for vigilance. And though the fear has faded, the lesson remains. Always be prepared for the unexpected, even in the most familiar setting. As a wildlife biologist, I've always been drawn to the mysteries of the natural world. One autumn, I was conducting research in a remote forest known for its dense foliage and elusive wildlife. The air was crisp, and the leaves crunched underfoot as I trekked deeper into the woods. The beauty of the forest was breathtaking, but there was an eerie stillness that set my nerves on edge. Little did I know, this serene setting would soon turn into a chilling nightmare. My goal was to observe wolf behavior, and I had set up a small camp near a clearing where sightings were common. As dusk fell, the forest grew darker, and the sounds of nocturnal creatures began to emerge. I settled into my tent, my equipment ready for any activity. The night was calm. The sense of being watched was unsettling. Eerie silence outside only heightened my unease. Around midnight, I heard rustling in the bushes near my camp. I peered out, hoping to catch a glimpse of a wolf, But what I saw instead sent chills down my spine. A group of masked figures dressed in dark robes emerged from the shadows, moving silently and purposefully. My heart raced as I watched them gather in the clearing, forming a circle. The air grew colder, and the atmosphere turned hauntingly sinister. Curiosity mingled with fear as I observed the group from my hiding spot. They began a ritualistic chant, their voices low and melodic. In the center of the circle, they placed a large, ornate bowl filled with what appeared to be blood. The sight was chilling, and my mind raced with questions. What were they doing, and why here, in the depths of the forest? The eerie ceremony felt like a scene from a horror movie. The chanting grew louder, and the air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy. Suddenly, the howls of wolves echoed through the forest, responding to the strange ritual. The masked figures didn't flinch. Instead, they seemed to welcome the wolves' presence. The animals emerged from the trees, their eyes glowing in the darkness. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying, a haunting reminder of nature's power and mystery. As the ritual continued, I realized I needed to leave. The sense of danger was overwhelming, and I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. I slowly backed away, careful not to make any noise. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breath came in shallow gasps. The forest, once a place of study and fascination, now felt like a menacing labyrinth. The masked figures and the wolves created an atmosphere of eerie dread. Just as I thought I was safe, I stepped on a twig, the sharp crack echoing through the night. The chanting stopped abruptly, and the figures turned in my direction. Panic surged through me, and I turned to run, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees becoming dark sentinels. I could hear footsteps behind me, quick and relentless. The sense of being pursued was terrifying. I stumbled upon an old, abandoned cabin, structure barely visible in the moonlight. Desperate for shelter, I burst inside and bolted the door. The interior was dark and musty, filled with cobwebs and dust. I crouched in a corner, trying to quiet my ragged breathing. The silence outside was deafening, and I strained to hear any signs of my pursuers. The cabin felt like a fragile barrier against the eerie darkness outside. Minutes passed like hours, and the sense of dread intensified. Just when I thought the danger had passed, a low growl sounded from behind me. I turned slowly, my flashlight illuminating the eyes of a wolf standing in the doorway. Fear paralyzed me, but the wolf didn't attack. Instead, it stared at me with a haunting intelligence, as if warning me to leave. The connection was brief but profound, and I knew I had to escape. I waited until the wolf retreated, then cautiously exited the cabin. The forest was still and silent, the masked figures nowhere in sight. I made my way back to my camp, eerie events of the night replaying in my mind. I quickly packed my gear and left the forest, my heart still racing. The experience had been both terrifying and awe-inspiring, a reminder of the mysteries that nature holds. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the memory of the ritual and the wolves. The forest, once a place of study, now held a haunting significance. I shared my story with colleagues, who listened with a mix of skepticism and fascination. The chilling encounter had changed me, deepening my respect for the natural world and its hidden secrets. It was a reminder that some mysteries are best left undisturbed. Every time I venture into the forest now, the memory of that night lingers. A sense of wonder is tinged with caution, and the beauty of nature is accompanied by a respect for its darker side. The experience taught me the importance of vigilance and the power of intuition. And though the fear has faded, the lesson remains. Always be prepared for the unexpected, and never underestimate the mysteries that lie within the wild. Babysitting had always been an easy way for me to earn some extra cash. One Friday night, I was hired to watch over a young boy named Timmy in a quiet suburban neighborhood. The house was cozy, and Timmy's parents were friendly, leaving me with clear instructions and emergency contact. As they left, I settled in for what I thought would be a routine evening. Little did I know, the night would take a chilling turn. Timmy was a bright, energetic kid, and we spent the first few hours playing games and watching cartoons. As bedtime approached, I tucked him in and read him a story. The house grew quiet, the only sounds being the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the wooden floors. I made myself comfortable on the couch, scrolling through my phone, unaware of the eerie events about to unfold. Around 10 p.m., I received a friend request on social media from an unfamiliar account. Profile picture was blank, and the name didn't ring any bells. Curious, I accepted it, only to receive an immediate message. "I see you're having fun babysitting." My heart skipped a beat. How did this person know I was babysitting? The message felt like a chilling premonition, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I decided to ignore the message, hoping it was just a prank. But then another message popped up. "Timmy looks so peaceful when he's sleeping." Fear surged through me. I rushed to Timmy's room, heart pounding, to find him sound asleep. Unaware of the danger, I locked his door and returned to the living room, scanning the darkened windows for any sign of an intruder. The sense of dread was overwhelming. The messages continued, each one more disturbing than the last. They described my actions in real time, as if someone was watching me from the shadows. I called Timmy's parents. There was no answer. Panic set in, and I knew I had to call the police. As I dialed, another message appeared. "Police can't help you." Eerie certainty in the words sent chills down my spine, but I pressed on, determined to protect Timmy. The operator assured me that officers were on their way. I locked all the doors and windows, making sure Timmy was safe in his room. The house, once a haven of warmth, now felt like a trap. Every shadow seemed menacing, and the silence was suffocating. I kept the phone line open, my voice trembling as I described the situation to the dispatcher. The minutes felt like hours as I waited for help to arrive. Suddenly, the power went out, plunging the house into darkness. My phone's flashlight cast eerie shadows on the walls as I moved cautiously through the house. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and frantic, as I checked on Timmy. He was still asleep, blissfully unaware of the terror unfolding. I stayed by his side, determined to protect him from whatever was out there. Finally, the sound of sirens pierced the night. The police arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. I rushed to the door, relief washing over me as I saw their familiar uniforms. They searched the house and the surrounding area, found no sign of the intruder. The messages had stopped as soon as they arrived, leaving behind a chilling sense of unresolved fear. The officers stayed until Timmy's parents returned, assuring us that they would continue to investigate. Timmy's parents were horrified by what had happened, and they thanked me profusely for protecting their son. The experience had left us all shaken, a haunting reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the most unexpected places. The police promised to keep a close watch on the neighborhood, but the sense of unease lingered. The once quiet, safe home now felt tainted by the chilling events of the night. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The memory of the messages and the eerie certainty of the intruder's knowledge haunted me. I became more cautious, more aware of my surroundings. The experience had changed me, making me more vigilant and protective of those I cared for. Babysitting, once a simple job, now carried a weight of responsibility and fear. Despite the fear, I continued to babysit, but with a heightened sense of awareness. The experience had taught me the importance of staying vigilant and trusting my instinct. Every time I entered a new home, I made sure to familiarize myself with the exits and security measures. The chilling encounter had left a mark on me, a reminder of the unpredictable dangers that can arise without warning. Every babysitting job since carries a hint of that night, a reminder to stay alert and prepared. The memory of the eerie messages and the darkness that followed serves as a testament to the importance of vigilance and courage. The experience, while terrifying, also reinforced my determination to protect and care for those in my charge. It's a story I carry with me, a lesson in resilience and the strength of the human spirit. Camping in the Everglades had always been on my bucket list. The vast, untamed wilderness promised adventure and a chance to connect with nature. One weekend, my friends and I packed our gear and set out for a remote campsite deep within the Everglades. The beauty of the landscape was breathtaking, with its lush greenery and winding waterways. As we set up camp, the sense of excitement was palpable, but so was the underlying feeling of isolation. The first night was serene, filled with the sounds of nocturnal wildlife and the gentle rustle of the breeze. We sat around the campfire, sharing stories and laughter. The darkness around us felt both comforting and intimidating, a reminder of the wilderness we were surrounded by. Little did we know, eerie calm would soon give way to a night of chilling encounters. The Everglades held secrets we were not prepared for. The following day, we decided to explore the nearby swamp. Paddling through the waterways, we marveled at the diverse wildlife and the haunting beauty of the mangroves. As the sun began to set, we noticed a small boat in the distance, moving slowly and deliberately. The boat's occupant, a lone man, seemed to be watching us. A sense of unease settled over us, but we continued our exploration, hoping it was just a curious local. Returning to our campsite, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The man in the boat vanished, but his presence lingered in our minds. As night fell, the sense of isolation grew stronger. We gathered around the campfire, trying to dispel the eerie feeling with laughter and conversation. The darkness seemed to press in on us, and every sound was amplified in the stillness of the night. Suddenly, we heard footsteps approaching our camp. The sound was deliberate and unnervingly close. My heart raced as we grabbed our flashlights and shone them into the darkness. A beam of light revealed the man from the boat, standing at the edge of our campsite, a menacing look in his eyes. He demanded to know what we were doing in his territory. The sense of danger was immediate and chilling. We tried to reason with him, explaining that we were just camping and meant no harm, but he seemed agitated and unconvinced. The air was thick with tension, and the eerie silence of the Everglades added to the sense of dread. The man hinted at a sinister purpose, mentioning something about protecting his business. It became clear that he was involved in something illegal, possibly smuggling or poaching. Realizing the gravity of the situation, we decided to pack up and leave immediately. The man watched us closely, his presence a constant threat. As we hurriedly gathered our belongings, the sense of fear was overwhelming. The once beautiful campsite now felt like a trap, and the darkness around us seemed to close in. We could hear the man's footsteps following us as we made our way to the water, our only escape route. Paddling away from the campsite, we kept our flashlights off, moving silently through the dark waterways. The sense of being pursued was palpable, and every splash of water sent chills down our spines. The Everglades, with its eerie beauty, now felt like a haunted maze. The man's boat followed us at a distance, his intentions clear. The sense of urgency grew as we navigated the winding paths, hoping to find safety. After what felt like hours, we spotted the distant lights of a ranger station. Relief washed over us as we paddled towards the safety of the lights. The man's boat veered off, disappearing into the darkness. We reached the station, breathless and shaken, and reported the encounter to the rangers. They assured us they would investigate and thanked us for the information. The sense of relief was immense. The haunting memory of the night lingered. In the days that followed, we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The Everglades, once a place of beauty and adventure, now held a sinister undertone. The experience had left us all shaken, a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lurk in the most unexpected places. We had narrowly escaped a potentially deadly encounter, and the memory of it stayed with us, a lesson in vigilance and survival. Every camping trip since has been approached with a heightened sense of awareness. The Everglades, with its haunting beauty, taught us the importance of respecting nature and the hidden dangers within it. The experience had made us more resilient, more cautious, and more appreciative of the safety we often take for granted. The chilling encounter with the smuggler was a story we shared with others, a reminder to stay alert and prepared in the wilderness. The Everglades, despite the fear, still call to me. The memory of that night is a reminder of the unpredictability of nature and the human spirit's strength. It taught me the importance of intuition and the power of quick thinking. The chilling experience serves as a testament to our resilience and the bonds forged in the face of danger. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains. guiding me in every adventure that lies ahead. Hiking the Appalachian Trail had always been a dream of mine. The idea of traversing miles of rugged terrain, surrounded by nature's beauty, was thrilling. One autumn afternoon, I set out on a solo hike, eager to experience the trail's serenity. The weather was perfect, with the sun casting a warm glow through the colorful leaves. As I hiked deeper into the wilderness, the trail became more isolated, and the sense of adventure grew stronger. Little did I know, a chilling encounter awaited me. First few hours were peaceful, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional chirp of birds. I felt a deep connection with nature, relishing the solitude. However, as the sun began to set, I noticed something unsettling. A group of men, armed and dressed in camouflage, moving stealthily through the trees. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly realized they were hiding from someone or something. I decided to keep my distance, quietly observing their movement. The men seemed agitated, their eyes darting around as if they expected danger at any moment. My mind raced with possibilities. Were they poachers, fugitives, or something even more sinister? The sense of unease grew as I continued on the trail, hoping to avoid any confrontation. The once tranquil forest now felt eerie and menacing. As night fell, I set up camp near a small stream, hoping the sound of running water would help me relax. The darkness brought a sense of vulnerability, and every rustle in the bushes heightened my anxiety. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and the memory of the armed men lingered in my mind. I built a small fire and settled into my tent, trying to calm my nerves. The forest, usually a place of peace, now felt like a haunted maze. Around midnight, I was jolted awake by the sound of footsteps nearby. I peered out of my tent, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. To my horror, I saw the men from earlier, moving quietly through the trees, their expressions tense and fearful. They were closer now, and it was clear they were searching for something or someone. My heart pounded as I realized they might be looking for me. I quickly doused the fire and packed up my gear, moving as silently as possible. The sense of urgency was overwhelming, and I knew I had to get away before they spotted me. The trail was barely visible in the darkness, and every step felt like a gamble. Eerie silence of the forest was broken only by the occasional snap of a twig or the distant howl of a coyote. The sense of being hunted was terrifying. I stumbled upon an old abandoned cabin, its windows boarded up and the door hanging off its hinges. Desperate for shelter, I slipped inside, hoping the darkness would hide me. The cabin was cold and musty, filled with cobwebs and decay. I crouched in a corner, listening intently for any sign of the men. The eerie atmosphere of the cabin was suffocating. Every creak of the floorboards sent chills down my spine. Footsteps outside grew louder, and I held my breath, praying they would pass by. The men seemed to be arguing, their voices low and urgent. I couldn't make out their words, but their tone was clear. They were desperate and on edge. The sense of danger was palpable, and I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. I needed to find a way to escape without drawing their attention. Just as I was about to make a run for it, the sound of helicopters overhead startled the men. They scattered into the trees, their flashlights flickering wildly. Relief washed over me as I realized help had arrived. The helicopters belonged to the park rangers, conducting a search for the armed men who were wanted for illegal activity. I emerged from the cabin, waving my flashlight to signal the rangers. The rangers landed nearby, and I quickly explained my ordeal. They assured me I was safe and that they would take care of the situation. The sense of relief was overwhelming, but the haunting memory of the night lingered. The Appalachian Trail, once a place of beauty and adventure, now held a darker significance. The experience had left me shaken, also more aware of the dangers that can lurk in the most unexpected places. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The memory of the armed men and the eerie forest haunted my thoughts. I became more cautious, more aware of my surroundings. The experience had changed me, making me more resilient and prepared for any challenge. The Appalachian Trail, with its rugged beauty, taught me valuable lessons about vigilance and survival. Every hike since has been approached with a heightened sense of awareness. The memory of that night serves as a reminder of the unpredictable dangers that can arise. The experience, while terrifying, also reinforced my love for nature and the importance of being prepared. The Appalachian Trail, despite the fear, still calls to me. The haunting encounter is a part of my journey, a testament to my strength and resilience. The story of my Appalachian Trail terror is one I share with fellow hikers. Cautionary tale of the unexpected dangers that can arise in the wilderness. It serves as a reminder to stay alert and trust your instinct. The chilling experience taught me the importance of preparedness and the strength of the human spirit. And while the fear has faded, a lesson remains, guiding me in every adventure that lies ahead. A remote cabin in Alaska sounded like the perfect getaway. Promise of solitude and nature's beauty was too enticing to resist. My family and I rented a cabin deep in the woods, far from any sign of civilization. The journey there was long and arduous, but the breathtaking scenery made it worthwhile. As we approached the cabin, nestled among towering pines, a sense of peace washed over us. Little did we know, this serene setting would soon turn into a chilling experience. The first few days were idyllic. We explored the surrounding forest, fished in the nearby lake, and enjoyed the tranquility of the remote wilderness. The cabin itself was rustic but comfortable, with a large fireplace that kept us warm during the chilly nights. However, as the days passed, we began to notice strange occurrences. It started with small things, a misplaced item, an unfamiliar sound, but soon escalated into something far more eerie. One evening, as we sat around the fireplace, the lights flickered and then went out. The sudden darkness was disorienting, and we scrambled to find flashlights. The sense of unease was palpable, but we tried to brush it off as a simple power outage. We lit some candles and continued our evening, eerie atmosphere adding an unsettling edge to our conversations. The cabin, once a haven, now felt slightly menacing. The next day, we discovered strange markings around the cabin, symbols etched into the wood, seemingly overnight. They were intricate and unfamiliar, adding to the growing sense of dread. We decided to stay close to the cabin, hoping to understand what was happening. That night, as we sat by the fire, we heard faint whispers, as if someone was speaking just outside the cabin. My heart pounded as we checked the windows. There was no one in sight. The whispers grew louder over the following nights, and the sense of being watched became overwhelming. One night, I woke up to find the cabin door wide open, a chilling breeze blowing in. I quickly closed and locked it, my hands shaking. The eerie events were taking a toll on all of us, and we decided it was time to leave. But the snowstorm that night trapped us, cutting off our escape route. Cabin, surrounded by snow, felt like a prison. As the storm raged outside, the whispers inside the cabin grew louder and more insistent. We huddled together in the living room, the fire providing little comfort. Suddenly, the whispers stopped, replaced by a low guttural growl. My blood ran cold as I realized the sound was coming from the basement. We had avoided the basement, finding it too creepy, but now it seemed we had no choice but to investigate. Armed with flashlights and a sense of dread, we descended the stairs. The basement was cold and damp, the same strange symbols etched into the walls. In the corner, we found an old, tattered book, its pages filled with cryptic writings. As I flipped through the pages, the whispers returned, now clearer and more menacing. It felt as if the cabin itself was alive, trying to communicate with us. The sense of danger was overwhelming. Desperation took hold, and we decided to burn the book, hoping it would end the haunting. As the flames consumed the pages, the whispers turned into screams, echoing through the cabin. The walls seemed to shake, and the temperature dropped sharply. We ran upstairs, the eerie sounds following us. The storm outside intensified, but inside, the cabin grew silent. The book was gone, but the sense of unease remained. The storm passed by morning, and we wasted no time packing our belongings. The cabin, now eerily quiet, felt like a place we needed to escape. As we drove away, the sense of relief was immense, but the haunting memories of our stay lingered. The remote cabin, with its chilling presence, had left a mark on us. We had come seeking solitude, but found something far more sinister. In the weeks that followed, the eerie events continued to haunt our thoughts. The symbols, the whispers, and the growls replayed in our minds, chilling reminder of our time in the cabin. We shared our story with friends, who listened in disbelief and horror. The experience had changed us, making us more cautious and aware of the unknown. The cabin in the woods, once a dream, had turned into a nightmare. Every time we see a remote cabin now, the memory of that haunting experience surfaces. A sense of wonder is tinged with caution, and the beauty of isolation is accompanied by a respect for its dangers. The experience taught us the importance of vigilance and the power of intuition. And though the fear has faded, the lesson remains. Always be prepared for the unexpected, and never underestimate the mysteries that lie within the wilderness. Always loved camping in the remote areas of the Southwest, where the desert meets the forest. One summer, my friends and I set out on a trip to explore a secluded area known for its beauty and tranquility. The first few days were perfect. We hiked, cooked over an open fire, and shared stories under the starlit sky. However, as the nights grew longer, we began to sense something eerie lurking in the darkness. One night, as we sat around the campfire, we heard a chilling sound. A low, guttural growl that sent shivers down our spines. At first, we dismissed it as a wild animal, but the noise grew closer and more menacing. The firelight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the surrounding trees. We exchanged nervous glances, our conversation dying down as we strained to listen. The sense of being watched was overwhelming. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the clearing. It was humanoid, but with animalistic features. A skinwalker. The creature's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, sending a wave of terror through me. My friends noticed it too, and we all froze, not daring to move. The air grew thick with tension, and the only sound was the crackling of the fire. The skinwalker seemed to be studying us. As quickly as it appeared, the skinwalker vanished into the darkness. We were left in a state of shock, our minds racing with fear and confusion. We decided to douse the fire and retreat to our tents, hoping that whatever it was wouldn't come back. The night was long and restless, every rustle and whisper outside our tents making our hearts race. The haunting presence of the skinwalker lingered in our thoughts. The next morning, we found strange footprints around our campsite, large, clawed prints that sent chills down our spine. We knew we had to leave. We packed up our gear quickly, eerie feeling of being watched never leaving us. As we hiked back to our cars, the forest seemed darker, the shadows deeper. Every snap of a twig made us jump, and we constantly looked over our shoulders. Just when we thought we were safe, we heard the same chilling growl from the night before. This time it was closer, more aggressive. We broke into a run, adrenaline pumping through our veins. The sense of dread was overwhelming, and the forest seemed to close in around us. The skinwalker was following us, its eerie presence almost tangible. We didn't stop until we reached our cars, breathless and terrified. Driving away from the campsite, we couldn't shake the feeling of being pursued. The memory of the skinwalker's glowing eyes and haunting growl was seared into our minds. We vowed never to return to that place. The beauty of the landscape forever tainted by the chilling encounter. The drive home was silent, each of us lost in our thoughts, trying to process what we had experienced. In the weeks that followed, I couldn't escape the haunting memories of that night. The encounter had left me with a deep sense of unease. I found myself constantly looking over my shoulder, fear of the skinwalker ever present. My friends and I shared our story with a few trusted people, but most dismissed it as a figment of our imagination. Yet, the terror we felt was real, and the eerie presence of the skinwalker was undeniable. The experience changed me, making me more cautious and aware of the unknown. Camping, once a beloved pastime, now carried a shadow of fear. The beauty of nature was intertwined with its dangers, and the memory of the skinwalker served as a chilling reminder. Every trip into the wilderness was approached with heightened vigilance, the haunting encounter never far from my mind. Despite the fear, I continued to seek solace in nature, but always with a sense of respect for its mysteries. The skinwalker encounter taught me the importance of staying alert and trusting my instincts. The chilling experience serves as a reminder that some things in this world are beyond our understanding. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, guiding me in every adventure that lies ahead. Exploring the woods near the Alabama state line had always been an adventure for my friend Jacob and me. We loved the dense forest, the serenity of nature, and the thrill of discovering new trails. One autumn day, we decided to venture deeper than we ever had before. The air was crisp, and the leaves crunched underfoot as we made our way into the heart of the forest. Little did we know, this trip would lead to a chilling encounter we would never forget. The deeper we went, the quieter the forest became. It was as if the usual sounds of nature were being swallowed by an eerie silence. We pushed on, our curiosity driving us forward. Suddenly, Jacob stopped dead in his tracks, his face pale. He pointed ahead, and my eyes followed his gaze. There, standing among the trees, was a towering figure. It had pale white skin, blue eyes that seemed to glow, and stood at least 9 feet tall. We were looking at a Wendigo. My heart pounded in my chest as we stood frozen, staring at the creature. It didn't move, but its presence was overwhelming, almost suffocating. The legends of the Wendigo, a monstrous being with an insatiable hunger for human flesh, flashed through my mind. Jacob and I exchanged terrified glances, knowing we had to get out of there. Slowly, we began to back away, our eyes never leaving the Wendigo. As if sensing our fear, the Wendigo let out a chilling growl, a sound that echoed through the forest and sent shivers down my spine. It started to move towards us, its movements unnaturally fast and jerky. Panic surged through us, and we turned and ran, the sense of dread propelling us forward. Forest, once a place of beauty and adventure, had turned into a nightmarish maze. We stumbled through the underbrush, the Wendigo's growls growing louder behind us. The thought of those glowing blue eyes and pale skin kept us running, our breath coming in ragged gasps. Trees seemed to close in around us, the shadows growing darker. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves, made my heart race faster. The sense of being hunted was terrifying. Just when we thought we couldn't run any longer, we burst into a small clearing. The sudden openness gave us a moment of relief, but it was short-lived. The Wendigo emerged from the trees, its eyes locked on us. Desperation took over, and we looked around for anything that could help us. In the center of the clearing, we saw an old hunting cabin. We sprinted towards it, praying it would offer some form of protection. We reached the cabin and slammed the door shut behind us. The wooden structure was old and rickety, but it was our only hope. We barricaded the door with whatever we could find, our hands shaking with fear. The growls of the Wendigo were just outside. We could hear its claws scraping against the walls. The cabin felt like a fragile barrier against the horror lurking outside. Inside, the cabin was dark and musty. We huddled together, trying to stay quiet and out of sight. The Wendigo's presence was almost palpable, with growls sending waves of terror through us. We knew we had to find a way to escape, but the options seemed limited. The night dragged on, each minute feeling like an eternity. Eerie silence was only broken by the occasional scratch at the door. As dawn approached, growls began to fade. We cautiously peeked out of the cabin, hoping the Wendigo had left. The forest was still and silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly with the morning light. We waited a bit longer, ensuring the coast was clear before making our move. With the first rays of sunlight, we slipped out of the cabin and made our way back to the trail as quickly and quietly as possible. The journey back was tense, our nerves frayed from the night's events. Every sound made us jump, and we constantly looked over our shoulders. The memory of the Wendigo's glowing eyes and haunting growls was seared into our mind. When we finally reached the edge of the forest, the sense of relief was overwhelming. We had survived the encounter. The fear lingered, In the days that followed, we shared our story with a few close friends who listened in awe and disbelief. The experience had changed us, making us more cautious and aware of the unknown. The woods, once a place of joy and exploration, now held a darker significance. The encounter with the Wendigo was a chilling reminder of the mysteries and dangers that lie hidden in nature. Every time we think about venturing into the woods, the memory of that night resurfaces. The sense of wonder is now tinged with caution, and the thrill of exploration is tempered by a respect for the unknown. The Wendigo encounter taught us the importance of staying vigilant and trusting our instinct. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, guiding us in every adventure that lies ahead. Fort Flagler, Washington, had always been a favorite getaway spot for me. The combination of history and nature offered a unique charm that I couldn't resist. One chilly autumn evening, I decided to take a solitary walk around the fort's grounds. The fading light cast long shadows, and the crisp air filled my lungs. It was a peaceful setting, or so I thought. Little did I know, a chilling encounter awaited me. As I wandered along the deserted paths, I felt a strange sense of unease. The fort's historic buildings stood silent, their windows dark and empty. I shrugged off the feeling, attributing it to the eerie atmosphere of dusk. Suddenly, I heard a rustling sound behind me. I turned and saw a deer standing at the edge of the clearing. At first, it seemed like a typical encounter with wildlife, but something about this deer was off. The deer had forward-facing eyes, giving it an unnervingly predatory look. My heart skipped a beat as I realized this was not a normal deer. Its movements were jerky and unnatural, almost robotic. The creature's gaze locked onto mine, and a chilling sense of dread washed over me. I wanted to turn and run, but my legs felt like lead. The eerie atmosphere of Fort Flagler had taken on a sinister edge. It took a cautious step back, my eyes never leaving the creature. It mirrored my movement, stepping forward with an almost deliberate menace. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I knew I had to get out of there. Slowly, I continued to back away, hoping not to provoke it. The not deer's eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, adding to the haunting scene. The fort's once peaceful surroundings now felt like a trap. As I turned to leave, the not deer let out a chilling sound, a mix between a growl and a hiss. My adrenaline kicked in, and I broke into a run, my heart pounding in my chest. The creature pursued me, its unnatural movements making it even more terrifying. Fort's paths twisted and turned, and every shadow seemed to hide another danger. I could hear the not deer's footsteps behind me, constant reminder of the threat. Desperation drove me to find safety. I spotted an old barracks building and sprinted towards it, hoping the sturdy walls would offer some protection. I burst through the door and slammed it shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The silence inside was deafening, but I knew the creature was still out there. I moved away from the door, my eyes scanning the dark interior for any signs of movement. The minutes dragged on, and the tension was unbearable. I strained to hear any sound. The fort remained eerily quiet. Just as I began to relax, a loud thud echoed through the building. The not deer was trying to get in. My heart raced as I searched for a way out. The windows were boarded up, and the only exit was the door I had just barricaded. The sense of being trapped was overwhelming. I grabbed a heavy piece of furniture and wedged it against the door, hoping it would hold. The thudding continued, growing more intense. I knew I had to find another way out. My flashlight beam danced across the room, revealing a trapdoor in the floor. With no other options, I pried it open and climbed down into the dark, musty cellar. The air was thick with dust, and the sense of dread was suffocating. The cellar was a maze of old crates and forgotten supplies. I navigated through the clutter, searching for an escape route. The thudding above had stopped, but I knew the creature was still out there. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, I saw a faint glimmer of light ahead. I hurried towards it, hoping it was an exit. The sense of urgency was overwhelming. I reached the source of the light and found a small, narrow tunnel leading outside. I squeezed through, the cold air a welcome relief. I emerged into the night, the fort's dark silhouette looming behind me. The sense of danger was still palpable, But I kept moving, determined to put as much distance between myself and the not deer possible. The forest around the fort offered some cover, and I finally felt a glimmer of hope. As I reached the edge of the fort's grounds, I stopped to catch my breath. The night was eerily quiet, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I glanced back, half expecting to see the not deer lurking in the shadows. But there was nothing. The encounter had left me shaken, but I was safe. I vowed never to return to Fort Flagler. The haunting memory of the not deer forever etched in my mind. In the days that followed, the experience haunted me. The not deer's predatory eyes and unnatural movements replayed in my mind, a chilling reminder of that night. I shared my story with a few close friends who listened in disbelief. The encounter had changed me, making me more cautious and aware of the unknown. Fort Flagler, once a place of history and beauty, now held a sinister significance. Every time I think of Fort Flagler, the memory of that night resurfaces. The sense of wonder is now tinged with caution, and the thrill of exploration is tempered by a respect for the unknown. The not deer encounter taught me the importance of staying vigilant and trusting my instincts. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, guiding me in every adventure that lies ahead. Growing up, I loved listening to my grandfather's tales. His stories were a blend of folklore and personal experiences, and one of my favorites was about Looney's Bridge. The bridge, located just outside our town, was said to be haunted by the ghost of a girl named Looney, who had lost her head in a tragic accident. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, my grandfather decided to share a chilling experience his friend Ike had on that very bridge. Ike was a skeptic, never one to believe in ghosts or supernatural tales. One foggy night, he drove his old pickup truck across Looney's Bridge, heading home after a long day of work. The fog was thick, and visibility was low. As he approached the middle of the bridge, his truck suddenly stalled. Frustrated, Ike got out to check the engine, cursing under his breath. The eerie silence of the foggy night was unsettling. As Ike tinkered with the engine, he heard a faint, haunting whisper. He glanced around but saw nothing. Fog seemed to swirl around him, and the air grew colder. He brushed off the whisper as his imagination and continued working on the truck. However, the whispers grew louder and more insistent, sending chills down his spine. It sounded like a girl's voice, calling his name in a ghostly echo. Determined to fix the truck and get out of there, Ike worked faster. But the whispers didn't stop. Instead, they were joined by the faint sound of footsteps, slowly approaching. Ike's heart raced as he realized he wasn't alone. He grabbed his flashlight and shone it into the fog. A beam of light cut through the mist, revealing a ghostly figure at the edge of the bridge. It was Looney, her headless form drifting towards him. Panic surged through Ike as the ghostly figure came closer. Her presence was chilling, and the air around him grew colder. He tried to start the truck again, but the engine refused to turn over. The ghost reached out, and Ike could feel an icy grip around his wrist. He screamed and yanked his hand away, the terror almost paralyzing. The eerie whispers grew louder, filling his mind with dread. Desperation took over, and Ike leapt back into his truck, slamming the door shut. He fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking uncontrollably. Just as the ghostly figure seemed to be upon him, the engine roared to life. Ike floored the gas pedal, the tires screeching as he sped off the bridge. In his rearview mirror, he saw Looney's ghost fading into the fog, her haunting presence lingering in his mind. Ike drove straight to my grandfather's house, his face pale and his hands trembling. He recounted the encounter in a shaky voice, still reeling from the experience. My grandfather listened intently, knowing that Ike's skepticism had been shattered by the chilling encounter. The story of Looney's Bridge had become all too real. The once skeptic Ike was now a firm believer in the supernatural. In the days that followed, Ike avoided Looney's Bridge, taking a longer route to work. The memory of the ghostly figure and the eerie whispers haunted him. He shared his story with others, warning them to stay away from the bridge after dark. The tale of Looney's Bridge spread through the town, adding to its haunting legend. The bridge, once just a piece of local folklore, was now a place of genuine fear. My grandfather's story left a lasting impression on me. The vivid imagery and the eerie details made it hard to forget. Every time I passed by Looney's Bridge, I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. The haunting tale of Looney's ghost had become a part of our town's identity, a reminder of the mysteries that linger in the places we least expect. Years later, I found myself sharing the story of Looney's Bridge with my own children. The eerie tale had been passed down through generations, a chilling reminder of the supernatural. The bridge, with its foggy nights and ghostly whispers, still held an air of mystery. The legend of Looney lived on, a testament to the power of storytelling and the fear of the unknown. Even today, the memory of my grandfather's tale remains vivid. The sense of wonder and fear that his stories evoked shaped my childhood and fueled my imagination. The haunting encounter on Looney's Bridge taught me to respect the unknown and to cherish the stories that connect us to our past. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, a timeless reminder of the power of a good ghost story. Staying in a secluded cabin deep in the woods had always been my idea of the perfect escape. The chance to disconnect from the hustle and bustle of everyday life and immerse myself in nature was too tempting to resist. One crisp autumn weekend, I decided to take the plunge. The drive was long and winding, and as I arrived, the sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the trees. The cabin was rustic but cozy, a perfect hideaway. Little did I know, a chilling encounter awaited me. The first night was peaceful. Crackling of the fire and the sounds of the forest created a serene atmosphere. As I sat on the porch sipping hot tea, I noticed a pair of glowing eyes in the distance. First, I thought it was just a deer, but something about those eyes felt different, more intense and almost human-like. A shiver ran down my spine, and I decided to head inside, trying to shake off the eerie feeling. The next day, I spent my time exploring the surrounding woods. The beauty of the changing leaves and the crisp air was invigorating. However, the sense of being watched never left me. I would catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, but whenever I turned to look, there was nothing there. The forest, usually a place of comfort, now felt menacing. The presence of the watcher was palpable, even in broad daylight. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, eerie feeling intensified. I sat by the fire, trying to read a book. The sense of being observed was overwhelming. The silence of the woods was broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. Suddenly, I heard a low, guttural growl coming from the tree line. My heart raced as I grabbed a flashlight and shone it into the darkness. The beam of light revealed nothing, but the sense of dread remained. Determined to find out what was stalking me, I decided to investigate. I ventured into the woods, the flashlight beam cutting through the inky darkness. The growl echoed again, closer this time. My pulse quickened as I scanned the trees, searching for any sign of the watcher. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sound being my own labored breathing. The glowing eyes appeared again, watching me from the shadows. I called out, hoping to scare off whatever it was, but the eyes remained fixed on me. The sense of fear was suffocating, and I slowly backed away, keeping the light trained on the eyes. The watcher followed my movements, its presence growing more menacing. I turned and ran back to the cabin, feeling of being pursued driving me forward. The forest seemed to close in around me, shadows deepening with each step. Back in the safety of the cabin, I locked all the doors and windows, my heart still racing. The sense of dread was overwhelming, and I knew I wasn't alone. The watcher was out there, silently observing. I sat by the window, peering into the darkness, hoping for some sign that it had left. The forest was still and silent, glowing eyes nowhere to be seen. But the fear lingered, an ever-present reminder of the lurking danger. The following days were a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, even during the day. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent waves of fear through me. The beauty of the forest was overshadowed by the haunting presence of the watcher. I knew I had to leave. The thought of venturing back into the woods was terrifying. Finally, on the last morning, I packed up my belongings and prepared to leave. The sense of urgency was overwhelming. I couldn't wait to get away from the cabin and its haunting surroundings. As I loaded the car, I felt those eyes on me once more. The Watcher was there, hidden in the trees, silently observing my every move. Drive back was tense. The memory of the glowing eyes and the chilling growl replaying in my mind. Back home, the fear slowly began to fade, but the memory of the Watcher remained vivid. The experience had changed me, making me more cautious and aware of the unknown. The forest, once a place of solace, now held a darker significance. The Watcher in the woods was a chilling reminder of the mysteries nature holds. It taught me the importance of staying vigilant and trusting my instincts. Every time I venture into the wilderness now, the memory of the Watcher resurfaces. The sense of wonder is now tinged with caution, and the thrill of exploration is tempered by a respect for the unknown. The experience taught me valuable lessons about vigilance and the power of intuition. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, guiding me in every adventure lies ahead. Visiting my family in Belém, northern Brazil, was always an adventure. The vibrant culture and lush landscapes provided a stark contrast to my usual surrounding. Our family home, an old colonial house, had been passed down through generations, carrying with it stories of the past. During one of my visits, I experienced a series of chilling encounters that forever changed the way I viewed our ancestral home. The house was beautiful, but had an eerie atmosphere. The wooden floors creaked, and the shadows seemed to dance in the flickering candlelight. My first night there, I woke to the sound of soft whispering. At first I thought it was just my imagination, but the whispers grew louder, more insistent. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, straining to hear the words. The room was dark, and the shadows felt almost alive. The next day, I asked my family about the whispers. They exchanged uneasy glances before my aunt finally spoke up. She told me about the house's haunted history, filled with tales of shadowy figures and unexplained phenomena. It was believed that the spirits of our ancestors lingered, watching over us. The thought was both comforting and chilling. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. That evening, during a family ritual to honor our ancestors, the eerie atmosphere intensified. As we lit candles and recited prayers, the air grew thick with tension. Suddenly, the lights began to flicker, and a loud pop echoed through the room as one of the bulbs exploded. We all jumped, startled by the sudden noise. The sense of unease was overwhelming, and I could feel the presence of something otherworldly. The most terrifying encounter happened late one night. I was lying in bed, trying to sleep, when I heard heavy footsteps approaching my room. The sound was deliberate, almost menacing. The door creaked open slowly, and a tall, lanky figure stood in the doorway, silhouette illuminated by the moonlight. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching me. Paralyzed with fear, I couldn't bring myself to call out. The figure remained for what felt like an eternity before it slowly backed away, disappearing into the shadows. The door closed with a soft click, and the room was plunged into silence. I lay there, too terrified to move, until the first light of dawn crept through the window. The sense of dread lingered, and I knew I had experienced something truly chilling. I confided in my grandmother the next morning, describing the tall figure and the overwhelming fear. She nodded solemnly, explaining that it was likely one of our ancestors. She believed that the spirits sometimes showed themselves to remind us of our heritage and to watch over us. While her words were meant to be comforting, they only deepened my unease. The thought of being watched by unseen entities was unnerving. As the days passed, the eerie encounters continued. I would catch glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corner of my eye, and strange noises echoed through the house at night. The sense of being watched never left me. Despite the beauty of the house and the warmth of my family, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that hung over me. The haunting presence of our ancestors was a constant reminder of the house's dark history. On my last night in Belém, I decided to confront my fear. I sat in the darkened living room, surrounded by flickering candles, and spoke aloud to the spirits. I expressed my respect and asked for their blessing. The air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to gather around me. For a moment, I felt a sense of peace, as if the spirits had acknowledged my presence. The room grew still, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. The next morning, as I prepared to leave, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. The house, with all its haunting memories, was a part of my heritage. The experiences had deepened my connection to my ancestors, but they had also left me with a sense of unease. I said goodbye to my family, promising to return, but knowing that the chilling encounters would stay with me forever. Back home, the memories of Belém and its ghostly encounters remained vivid. The sense of wonder and fear I had felt in that old house shaped my understanding of the supernatural. The stories of our ancestors, their presence lingering in the shadows, became a part of my own story. The haunting experiences taught me to respect the unknown and to cherish the ties that bind us to our past. Every time I think of Belém, the memories of those chilling encounters resurface. The sense of connection to my heritage is now intertwined with a respect for the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding. The ghostly encounters in our family home serve as a reminder of the unseen forces that shape our lives. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, guiding me in every step of my journey. Growing up in Indiana, I'd always heard whispers of strange creatures lurking in the woods. Stories of ghostly apparitions and mythical beasts were part of local folklore. However, nothing could have prepared me for the chilling encounters I experienced, what many believed to be a hellhound. These encounters left an indelible mark on me, making the familiar surroundings of my home feel eerily menacing. It all started one late autumn evening. I was driving home along a secluded country road when I saw something in the distance. At first, I thought it was a large dog, or maybe even a deer, but as I got closer, I realized this was no ordinary animal. Standing in the middle of the road was a massive, black wolf-like creature with glowing red eyes. My heart raced as the creature locked its eyes on me, a chilling sensation running down my spine. The creature stood there, unmoving, as if challenging me to approach. I slowed the car to a crawl, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, it lunged at a deer that had appeared from the side of the road, its speed and ferocity unlike anything I'd ever seen. The deer didn't stand a chance. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying. I quickly drove past, my mind reeling from the encounter. The image of those glowing red eyes haunted me for days. A week later, the hellhound made its presence known again. This time, it was outside my home. I had just returned from a late-night shift and was heading to bed when I heard growling outside my window. Peering through the blinds, I saw the same large black creature prowling around my yard. Its eyes glowed eerily in the darkness, and the sight sent chills through me. The sense of being watched was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling of impending danger. Determined to protect my home, I armed myself with a flashlight and ventured outside. The beam of light cut through the night, revealing the hellhound standing at the edge of the woods, its red eyes fixed on me. I shouted, hoping to scare it off, but it didn't move. Instead, it let out a low, menacing growl that echoed through the still night air. My heart pounded as I backed away, knowing that this creature was not to be trifled. The following days were filled with unease. The hellhound seemed to be watching me, its presence felt even when it wasn't visible. The eerie atmosphere around my home grew thicker, and every rustle of leaves or snap of a twig made my heart race. I shared my experiences with a few close friends who were both fascinated and horrified. Some suggested it was a guardian spirit, while others believed it was an omen of doom. Just as we turned to go, banging stopped abruptly. The sudden silence was deafening, and the atmosphere grew even more tense. We felt a chilling presence in the room, as if we were not alone. The temperature dropped, and our breath fogged in the air. The sense of being watched was almost tangible, and I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. We backed out of the room, our flashlights shaking. As we hurried down the hallway, we heard footsteps behind us. They were slow and deliberate, echoing in the silence. Panic surged through us, and we broke into a run, not daring to look back. The footsteps seemed to follow us, growing louder and more menacing. The schoolyard, once a place of adventure, now felt like a haunted maze. We sprinted towards the exit, a sense of fear driving us forward. We burst out into the night, the cool air a welcome relief. The footsteps stopped, and the eerie silence of the schoolyard returned. We didn't stop running until we were far from the school, our hearts pounding and our minds reeling from the experience. The sense of dread lingered, and we couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The old school, with its haunted history, had shown us a side we had never seen before. In the days that followed, Jake and I couldn't stop talking about the encounter. We shared our story with a few friends, who listened with a mix of fascination and fear. The banging noise, the footsteps, and the chilling presence were all too real. The haunted schoolyard had left its mark on us, a reminder of the mysteries that lurk in the shadows. We vowed never to return, the memory of that night forever etched in our mind. Every time I pass by the old schoolyard, I can't help but feel a chill run down my spine. The sense of wonder and fear that night instilled in me is unforgettable. The experience taught me to respect the unknown and to cherish the thrill of discovery. The haunted schoolyard, with its eerie charm and chilling presence, remains a significant part of my childhood. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, guiding me in every adventure lies ahead. A remote cabin deep in the woods seemed like the perfect retreat from the chaos of daily life. I'd always dreamed of a peaceful escape, surrounded by nature's beauty and the serenity of the forest. One autumn weekend, I decided to make that dream a reality. The drive to the cabin was long and winding, and as I arrived, the sun was setting, casting a warm golden light through the trees. The cabin was rustic yet cozy, an ideal hideaway. Little did I know, a chilling encounter awaited me. The first night was calm and uneventful. Crackling of the fire and the sounds of the forest created a tranquil atmosphere. I sat on the porch, sipping hot tea, and enjoyed the serene surroundings. As darkness fell, the forest came alive with nocturnal sounds. The rustling of leaves and distant hoots of owls added to the ambiance. I felt at peace, lulled by the gentle rhythms of nature. The next day, I spent my time exploring the woods. The crisp air and vibrant colors of autumn leaves invigorated me. However, as I ventured deeper into the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every now and then, I would catch glimpses of movement out of the corner of my eye, but when I turned to look, there was nothing there. The forest, which had initially felt welcoming, now seemed to hide unseen eyes. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sense of unease grew stronger. I sat by the fire, trying to read a book, but the feeling of being observed was overwhelming. The shadows cast by the flickering flames seemed to dance with a life of their own. Suddenly, I heard a faint rustling sound from the edge of the clearing. My heart skipped a beat as I turned to look, but the darkness revealed nothing. Determined to confront my fear, I grabbed a flashlight and ventured outside. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the trees and underbrush. The forest was eerily silent, the usual night sounds absent. As I scanned the perimeter of the clearing, I saw them, a pair of glowing eyes staring back at me from the shadows. The eyes were unnaturally bright and filled with an unsettling intelligence. I called out, hoping to scare off whatever creature it was, but the eyes remained fixed on me. The sense of dread was palpable, and I slowly backed away, retreating to the safety of the cabin. The glowing eyes disappeared, but the fear lingered. I locked all the doors and windows, my heart racing. The cabin, once a sanctuary, now felt like a fragile barrier against the unknown. The following nights were filled with tension. The eerie feeling of being watched persisted, and I could hear faint noises outside the cabin, footsteps, whispers, and rustling leaves. Each night, the glowing eyes would appear at the edge of the clearing, watching me from the darkness. The sense of impending danger was suffocating. I couldn't sleep, constantly on edge and anticipating another encounter. One particularly chilling night, the noises grew louder and more insistent. I heard scratching at the back door, followed by a low, guttural growl. My pulse quickened as I grabbed a heavy flashlight and cautiously approached the door. The growling stopped, replaced by a haunting silence. I swung the door open, shining the light into the night. Saw nothing. The sense of unease was overwhelming, and I knew I had to leave. The next morning, I packed up my belongings, determined to get away from the cabin and its haunting surroundings. As I loaded the car, I felt those eyes on me once more. The watcher was there, hidden in the trees, silently observing my every move. Drive back was tense, the memory of the glowing eyes and the chilling growls replaying in my mind. The forest, once a place of beauty, had become a source of fear. Back home, the memories of the cabin and the eerie encounters haunted me. The sense of wonder and fear I had felt in the woods was unforgettable. The experience had changed me, making me more cautious and aware of the unknown. The forest, with all its beauty, now held a darker significance. The watcher in the woods was a chilling reminder of the mysteries that nature holds. It taught me the importance of staying vigilant and trusting my instinct. Every time I think of that cabin, the memory of those glowing eyes resurfaces. The sense of wonder is now tinged with caution, and the thrill of exploration is tempered by a respect for the unknown. The experience taught me valuable lessons about vigilance and the power of intuition. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, guiding me in every adventure that lies ahead. When I was a teenager, visiting my grandparents' cottage in Egypt was always a mix of excitement and mystery. The cottage, located in a small village on the outskirts of Cairo, was an old, sprawling building with thick stone walls and narrow hallways. It had been in the family for generations, and while it was full of charm, it also had a reputation for being haunted. One summer night, I had an experience that solidified that eerie reputation in my mind forever. The day had been hot, as Egyptian summers often are, but the night brought a cool breeze. After a long day of exploring the village, I was exhausted and ready for bed. My grandparents had already retired to their room, leaving me alone to wander the dark hallways. The cottage was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the wooden beams. I couldn't shake the feeling of something watching me, but I chalked it up to an overactive imagination. As I made my way to the guest room, the old stone floors felt cold beneath my feet. The hallway was dimly lit by a single flickering bulb, casting eerie shadows on the walls. I paused by the bathroom, considering a quick stop before bed, but something made me hesitate. The air felt thick, almost oppressive. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I quickly dismissed the feeling and continued to the guest room. I settled into bed, trying to ignore the strange sensation that lingered in the pit of my stomach. The room was dark, and the only sound was the distant hum of the ceiling fan. I closed my eyes, hoping to drift off to sleep. The feeling of unease only grew stronger. Then, just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard it. A low, rumbling noise coming from the hallway. It sounded like something large and heavy moving slowly towards my room. My heart began to race as I listened to the sound grow louder. I sat up in bed, straining to hear what it could be. The noise stopped just outside my door, and the silence that followed was deafening. I held my breath, waiting. Nothing happened. Just as I started to relax, the door creaked open slightly, and a large black mass appeared in the doorway. It was shapeless and ominous, like a living shadow. Paralyzed with fear, I couldn't move or make a sound. The black mass seemed to pulse with a dark energy, filling the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. It hovered in the doorway for what felt like an eternity, and I could feel its cold presence seeping into my bones. My mind raced with thoughts of what it could be. Was it a ghost, a demon, or something even worse? The fear was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. Finally, the mass began to move again, slowly drifting down the hallway. I didn't dare follow it, too terrified to leave the safety of my bed. The oppressive atmosphere lingered long after it had gone, and I spent the rest of the night wide awake, clutching the covers and listening for any sign of its return. The cottage, once a place of warmth and family, now felt like a prison filled with dark, unseen forces. The next morning, I cautiously made my way to the kitchen, where my grandmother was preparing breakfast. I didn't know how to explain what I had seen, but I needed to tell someone. I described the black mass to her, expecting disbelief, but instead she nodded solemnly. She told me that the cottage had a long history of strange occurrences, and that others in the family had encountered similar phenomena. It was believed to be the spirit of a long-departed ancestor, one who was not at peace. Hearing this only deepened my unease. The idea that the cottage was haunted by a restless spirit was chilling, but it also made sense. The atmosphere, strange noises, and the oppressive feeling in the air all pointed to something supernatural. My grandmother reassured me that the spirit meant no harm, but the experience had left a mark on me. I couldn't shake the memory of that dark, formless mass and the terror it had instilled in me. As the days passed, I tried to move past the encounter, but it was always in the back of my mind. I avoided the hallway at night and made sure never to be alone in the cottage after dark. The sense of fear never fully left me, and I couldn't help but feel that the spirit was still watching, waiting. The cottage, once a place of family and tradition, now held a darker significance in my life. Years later, the memory of that night, still vivid. The experience has left me with a deep respect for the supernatural and the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding. The terrifying night in my grandparents' cottage taught me to be cautious and aware of the unknown forces that can exist in the most familiar places. The fear has faded, but the lesson remains, a reminder that some things are beyond our control and comprehension. The southwestern desert had always been a place of mystery for me. Vast, open spaces and the sense of isolation made it the perfect setting for camping trips and late-night stories around the fire. On one particular trip, I learned that some stories are more than just tales. They're warnings. It all started when I noticed a dog-like creature lurking at the edge of our campsite. First, I thought it was a stray, but something about its movements felt off, almost too deliberate. My friend and I exchanged uneasy glances, but we dismissed it, trying to focus on the warmth of the fire. As the night wore on, the creature didn't leave. Instead, it seemed to inch closer, its eyes reflecting the firelight with an unsettling glow. My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. As I approached, the creature suddenly stood up on its hind legs, transforming into a grotesque humanoid figure. My heart raced, and I stumbled back in shock. The creature let out a distorted scream that echoed through the night, sending chills down my spine. It wasn't just an animal, it was something far more sinister, a skinwalker. We scrambled to our tents, fear gripping us like a vice. The night was eerily silent, the only sound being the distant rustling of the wind through the trees. I couldn't shake the image of that creature standing on two legs, its eyes locked on mine. Every shadow outside seemed to harbor another one of those things, watching and waiting. Sleep was impossible. Every noise sent a wave of terror through me. The darkness felt alive, pulsing with an eerie energy that kept me on edge. The following day, we packed up early, eager to leave the area behind. The sense of dread lingered. As we drove away, couldn't help but feel that we were being followed. Sure enough, just as we reached the highway, I caught a glimpse of something in the rearview mirror. Flash of movement, too quick to identify. It was enough to remind me that whatever we had encountered wasn't done with us yet. A week later, I was hiking alone in a different part of the desert when I heard it again. Same distorted scream. My blood ran cold as I scanned the area, but there was nothing in sight. The scream came again, this time from a different direction. It was as if the very air around me was alive with those chilling cries. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there, watching me, waiting for the right moment. I decided to cut the hike short, my nerves frayed by the constant sense of being hunted. As I made my way back to the trailhead, I heard footsteps behind me, heavy and deliberate. I turned quickly, but once again, there was nothing there. The desert, usually so quiet and serene, had become a place of terror. The sense of unease was overwhelming, and I knew I had to get out of there, for it was too late. As I made my way down the trail, I couldn't stop thinking about the ghostly figure who had guided me. Who was he? And why had he helped me? Stories of Glastonbury Mountain's haunted past flashed through my mind. and I wondered if I had encountered one of the lost souls who had never made it off the mountain. The thought was chilling. There was also a sense of gratitude. Without his help, I might have become another one of the mountain's mysteries. The mist began to lift as I descended, revealing the familiar landscape, the lower trails. The sense of dread that had hung over me like a dark cloud started to dissipate, replaced by a strange sense of peace. The mountain, with all its eerie beauty and haunting legends, had let me go. But the experience had changed me. The line between the living and the dead had blurred, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed over into a world that was not my own. When I finally reached the trailhead, the sun was setting, casting a golden light over the landscape. The mountain loomed behind me, its peak shrouded in mist. I took one last look at the towering silhouette, a mix of awe and fear washing over me. The experience had been both terrifying and enlightening, a reminder of the mysteries that lie just beyond the veil of the everyday world. Glastonbury Mountain was more than just a hike. It was a journey into the unknown. Back in the safety of my home, the memory of that day on the mountain lingered. The ghostly figure, the looping trails, the mist that seemed to have a life of its own, all of it stayed with me, haunting my thoughts. I shared my story with a few close friends, who listened with a mix of disbelief and fascination. The mountain had revealed its secrets to me, but it had also left me with more questions than answers. Every time I think of Glastonbury Mountain, I feel a shiver run down my spine. The haunting beauty of the place, the sense of being watched, and the ghostly guide who appeared out of nowhere. All of it is etched into my memory. The experience taught me to respect the unknown, and to approach the mysteries of the world with a sense of wonder and caution. And while the fear has faded, the lesson remains, guiding me in every step of my journey through life. It was supposed to be a simple weekend getaway, chance for my brother and me to escape the stress of school and work by spending a few days in the tranquility of nature. We'd chosen a secluded cabin in the woods, far from any signs of civilization. The first night was peaceful, with nothing but the sound of crickets and the occasional rustling of leaves in the breeze. However, as the sun set on the second day, things took a chilling turn that we'd never forget. We were sitting around the campfire roasting marshmallows when we heard a noise coming from the woods. At first, it sounded like a deer moving through the brush, but there was something off about it. The movements were too deliberate, almost calculated. My brother and I exchanged uneasy glances but tried to brush it off. We were deep in the woods after all. Wildlife was to be expected. But the sense of unease grew stronger, making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. As we continued to listen, the sound grew closer, and we could make out the distinct sound of something, or someone, moving through the underbrush. Suddenly, the creature emerged from the shadows, and what we saw sent chills down our spines. It looked like a deer, but with something terribly wrong. Its legs were too long, its eyes too human, and its tail, it wasn't a deer's tail at all. It was long and bushy, like that of a fox. The creature stared at us with an eerie intelligence, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. My brother whispered, "What the hell is that?" But neither of us had an answer. The creature seemed to be sizing us up, as if deciding whether we were a threat or prey. The fire crackled between us, casting flickering shadows on the creature's distorted form. The air grew thick with tension, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, as if making a decision, the creature turned and disappeared back into the woods, leaving us in stunned silence. We sat there, too shocked to speak, the crackling of the fire the only sound breaking the stillness. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what we had just seen. Was it some kind of mutant animal? Forest spirit? I didn't know what to think, but one thing was clear. We weren't alone out here. The forest, with all its beauty and tranquility, suddenly felt menacing, as if it was hiding more secrets than we could ever imagine. That night, as we tried to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that the creature was still out there, watching us from the darkness. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of the cabin made my heart race. My brother and I were both on edge, lying in our bunks, barely speaking. Just as I was beginning to drift off, I heard it, my name, being called from outside. The voice was soft, almost pleading, but there was something off about it, something that made my blood run cold. I sat up, heart pounding, and looked over at my brother, who was wide-eyed and pale. He had heard it too. Voice called out again, closer this time, but distorted, as if someone was mimicking human speech but not quite getting it right. Fear was palpable, and neither of us dared to respond. We knew instinctively that whatever was out there, it wasn't human. The night stretched on, each minute feeling like an hour as we waited in tense silence, praying for the dawn. When morning finally came, we wasted no time packing up and leaving the cabin. The events of the previous night weighed heavily on us, and the sense of dread lingered long after we'd left the forest behind. We didn't talk much on the drive home, both of us lost in our thoughts, trying to make sense of what had happened. Forest, once a place of refuge, had become a place of fear, and we both knew we wouldn't be returning anytime soon. In the weeks that followed, I found myself replaying the events over and over in my mind. The creature's distorted form, the eerie intelligence in its eyes, the voice calling my name, was all too real to dismiss as a mere hallucination. Started researching strange creatures and unexplained phenomena, but nothing I found matched what we had seen. The memory of that night remained vivid, a chilling reminder of the unknown lurking just beyond the edges of the firelight. Even now, years later, I can't shake the feeling that the creature is still out there, watching, waiting. The forest holds many secrets. Not all of them are meant to be uncovered. The encounter taught me to respect the unknown and to trust my instincts when something feels wrong. While I've had other outdoor adventures since, I'm always on edge, always alert, knowing that the mysterious creature we encountered could be lurking in the shadows, ready to make its presence known once again. Every time I think back to that weekend, I feel a chill run down my spine. The encounter with the creature changed the way I see the world, making me more aware of the thin veil that separates the familiar from the unknown. Forest, with all its natural beauty, now holds a darker significance for me. A reminder that not everything can be explained, and that sometimes it's better to leave certain mysteries unsolved. Hunting had always been a tradition in my family, passed down from generation to generation. There was something about the stillness of the woods, the thrill of the chase, and the connection to nature that kept me coming back every season. One fall, I decided to go on a solo hunting trip, deep in the backwoods, a place I had heard about from a fellow hunter but had never ventured into myself. It was supposed to be the perfect spot, far from any signs of civilization. But what I encountered there was something I'd never imagined. The first day was uneventful. I set up camp in a small clearing, surrounded by dense trees that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The woods were quiet, almost unnervingly so, but I brushed it off as just the natural silence of a remote area. As the sun began to set, I settled by the campfire, the warmth of the flames providing a comforting contrast to the growing chill in the air. Little did I know, the real chill was yet to come. That night, as I lay in my tent, I was woken by a sound, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the ground. My first thought was that it was a bear, but something about it felt off. It wasn't just the sound itself, but the way it seemed to resonate in the stillness of the night, as if the very air was holding its breath. I sat up, my heart pounding, and listened intently. But the growling had stopped as suddenly as it had started. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe the wind playing tricks on me, and tried to go back to sleep. But the sense of unease wouldn't leave me. The woods, once a place of peace and solitude, now felt threatening. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made my nerves jangle. Eventually, I drifted off into a restless sleep, only to be woken again by that same growl, this time closer. I grabbed my rifle and flashlight, stepping out of the tent into the cold night air. The forest was dark, trees casting long shadows in the moonlight. I scanned the area with my flashlight, but the beam of light revealed nothing, just trees and underbrush as far as the eye could see. The growl came again from somewhere deeper in the woods, and this time it was accompanied by the sound of heavy footsteps, slowly moving towards me. Fear gripped me as I realized whatever was out there wasn't just an animal. The footsteps were too deliberate, too heavy, almost as if something massive was stalking me. I backed towards the campfire, hoping the light would keep whatever it was at bay. The growling grew louder, more menacing, and I could feel the ground tremble with each step the creature took. The forest around me seemed to close in, the darkness becoming almost tangible. I knew I couldn't stay there. Whatever was out there was getting closer, and I had no intention of finding out what it was. I quickly packed up my gear, all the while keeping my eyes and ears focused on the woods around me. The growling continued, now circling the camp, as if the creature was toying with me. My heart raced as I grabbed my rifle, knowing it might be my only chance if things went south. As I made my way through the woods, the sense of being followed was overwhelming. Every few steps, I would hear the growl, always from a different direction, as if the creature was herding me deeper into the forest. The darkness seemed to press in on me, and the trees, once familiar and welcoming, now felt like barriers trapping me in. The only light was from my flashlight, its beam flickering as if struggling to cut through the oppressive blackness. I walked for what felt like hours, my nerves frayed, my senses on high alert. Growling continued, now accompanied by strange, guttural noises that sounded almost like a language, primitive and menacing. My fear turned to desperation as I realized I was lost, the creature still stalking me. I knew I had to find a way out before my stamina gave out or my nerves broke. Just when I thought I couldn't go any further, I stumbled upon an old hunting trail, overgrown and barely visible in the dark. Relief washed over me as I recognized it from a map I had studied earlier. The trail would lead me back to my truck, if I could just follow it without losing my way. I forced myself to focus, pushing aside the fear as I made my way along the narrow path, growling still echoing in the distance. After what felt like an eternity, I finally saw the lights of my truck through the trees. I sprinted the last few yards, not daring to look back. The sense of relief was overwhelming as I climbed into the driver's seat, locking the doors and starting the engine. The growling had stopped, but the memory of it lingered, chilling me to the bone. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, even as the woods receded into the distance. Back home, the events of that night haunted me. Couldn't stop thinking about the creature, the growling, feeling of being hunted. I shared my story with a few fellow hunters, but none of them had ever encountered anything like it. The backwoods, once a place of peace and solitude, had become a place of fear. The encounter taught me to respect the unknown and to always be prepared for the unexpected. While I still love hunting, I'm always wary of venturing too deep into the woods alone, knowing that something out there might be watching. Mike had always been a skeptic, a man of science and logic who believed that every mystery had a rational explanation. But when Sarah, his closest friend, vanished during a hike in a dense, ancient forest, his world was turned upside down. The authorities had conducted a thorough search, but after weeks of fruitless effort, they had given up. Mike, however, couldn't let go. Something deep within him whispered that Sarah was still out there, and he was determined to find her, no matter the cost. The more Mike delved into the history of the forest, the more unsettling stories he uncovered. Locals spoke of spirits and ancient rituals, a pact made long ago with a powerful forest spirit that demanded sacrifices to maintain the balance between the human world and the natural one. Skeptical as he was, Mike couldn't ignore the patterns. The disappearances, the eerie sightings, the whispers of a forest that was alive, aware, and hungry. Desperation drove him to seek out those who might know more. His search led him to an old, crumbling library in a nearby town, where he discovered ancient texts that described the rituals in chilling detail. The writing spoke of a guardian of the forest, a spirit bound to protect the land, but cursed to do so through blood and fear. The ritual required a willing participant to take on the role of the guardian, sacrificing their humanity in exchange for eternal life as the spirit's enforcer. Mike's stomach churned as he read, the implications clear. Sarah had somehow been drawn into this ancient pact. As the days turned into weeks, Mike's obsession grew. He spent countless hours poring over maps, old journals, and folklore, piecing together a puzzle that seemed impossible to solve. The more he learned, the more he realized that Sarah's fate was tied to the very heart of the forest, a place where the veil between the human world and the spirit world was thin. He knew that to find her, he would have to confront the spirit itself, and possibly take her place in the ancient ritual. Armed with this knowledge, Mike ventured into the forest, his heart heavy with fear and determination. The trees loomed over him like silent sentinels, their branches forming a dark canopy that blotted out the sky. The deeper he went, the more the forest seemed to close in around him, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig made his heart race. He pressed on, driven by a desperate hope that he could still save Sarah. As night fell, the forest took on an eerie, otherworldly quality. The shadows seemed to move on their own, and the wind carried whispers that Mike couldn't quite make out. He reached a clearing that felt strangely familiar, though he had never been there before. At the center of the clearing stood a stone altar, covered in moss and etched with ancient symbols that glowed faintly in the dim light. Mike knew this was the place, the heart of the forest, where the rot. Just as he was about to step forward, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Sarah, but she was changed. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and her movements were slow, almost mechanical. She was no longer fully human. She had begun the transformation into the forest guardian. Mike's heart broke at the sight. He knew what he had to do. Called out to the spirit, demanding that it release her and take him instead. The forest responded with a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from the very ground beneath his feet. The air grew colder, and a dark, towering figure materialized behind Sarah. It was the spirit, eyes burning with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. It studied Mike for a long moment before speaking, its voice like the rustling of leaves in a storm. It offered him a choice: take Sarah's place and become the guardian, or leave the forest and never return, knowing that Sarah would be lost forever. Mike's mind raced, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He knew that if he accepted, he would lose his humanity, his life as he knew it. But he couldn't abandon Sarah to such a fate. Steeling himself, he nodded, accepting the spirit's offer. The spirit let out a chilling laugh, its form shifting as it moved toward Mike. He felt a cold hand touch his chest, and then everything went dark. When Mike awoke, he was alone in the clearing. The stone altar was gone, and the forest was silent, but he could feel the change within him. The spirit had kept its word. He was now the guardian of the forest. He could sense every movement within the trees, every rustle of the leaves. He was no longer fully human, but neither was he fully spirit. As he took his first steps into his new role, he felt a strange sense of peace. Sarah was safe, and he had fulfilled his promise. Back in the world outside the forest, Mike was never seen again. Locals would sometimes speak of a mysterious figure that roamed the woods, a protector who ensured that the balance between the human world and the spirit world was maintained. The forest, once a place of fear and mystery, became a place of reverence and respect. And while Mike's sacrifice was known only to a few, the impact of his decision would be felt for generations to come. Mike had never imagined that his life would come to this. A final, fateful decision in the heart of a haunted forest. The days leading up to this moment had been a blur of fear, desperation, and a relentless search for answers. Sarah's disappearance had shattered his world, and the discovery of the ancient pact between the forest spirit and those who ventured too deep had left him with an impossible choice. Now, standing at the edge of the clearing where the spirit's presence was strongest, Mike knew there was no turning back. The air was thick with tension, forest silent as if holding its breath. Mike could feel the weight of the spirit's gaze upon him, though it remained hidden in the shadows. The choice was clear: accept the role of guardian, a role that would strip him of his humanity but save Sarah, or walk away and live with the knowledge that he had condemned her to an eternity of suffering. The thought of losing her leaving her behind in this cursed place was unbearable. As Mike stood there, memories of Sarah flooded his mind. Their laughter, their shared dreams, the way she had always pushed him to be better. She had been the light in his life, and the idea of that light being snuffed out by the dark forces of the forest was too much to bear. He knew he couldn't live with himself if he didn't try to save her, even if it meant losing everything he had ever known. The forest seemed to sense his resolve, and the shadows began to shift. The spirit materialized before him, a towering figure of darkness with eyes that glowed with ancient knowledge and power. Its presence was overwhelming, the very air around it crackling with energy. The spirit spoke in a voice that was both a whisper and a roar, offering Mike one last chance to turn back, to leave the forest and never return. But Mike didn't flinch. His mind was made up. "I'll do it," Mike said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. "I'll take Sarah's place. Just let her go." The spirit's eyes narrowed, studying him for a long moment. Then it nodded, its form shifting and warping as it prepared to fulfill the ancient ritual. Mike felt a cold, creeping sensation begin to spread through his body, starting at his chest and working its way outward. It was as if the very essence of the forest was seeping into him, changing him from the inside out. He could feel his humanity slipping away, replaced by something ancient and powerful. As the transformation continued, Mike's thoughts began to blur. The memories of his life, of Sarah, of everything he had ever known, started to fade, replaced by a deep connection to the forest and all its secrets. He could feel the trees, the earth, animals, all of it was a part of him now. The spirit's voice echoed in his mind, guiding him through the process, showing him the responsibilities of the guardian. It was a burden he was willing to bear, for Sarah's sake. Suddenly, the spirit's grip on him loosened, and Mike felt a presence beside him. Sarah. She was there, standing in the clearing, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. The spirit had kept its word. She was free. But as she looked at Mike, her expression shifted to one of horror. She could see the change in him, the way his eyes had taken on a faint, eerie glow, the way his movements were no longer entirely human. "Mike, what have you done?" she whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. Mike tried to speak, to reassure her, but the words wouldn't come. The connection to his old self was too weak, too distant. Instead, he simply nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. He had done what he needed to do. Sarah was safe, and that was all that mattered. She took a step toward him, but the spirit's presence flared up, pushing her back. It was clear that Mike was no longer the man she had known. He was something else entirely now. The spirit turned its gaze to Sarah, and for a moment, the air was filled with tension. But then it nodded, a silent acknowledgement of Mike's sacrifice. The shadows around Sarah began to lift, and she felt herself being gently pushed toward the edge of the clearing, toward safety. She looked back at Mike one last time, tears streaming down her face, before turning and running into the forest, away from the nightmare that had claimed him. As Sarah disappeared into the trees, the spirit turned its full attention back to Mike. The transformation was complete. Mike was now the guardian of the forest, his humanity a distant memory. He'd feel the power coursing through him, the knowledge of the forest's secrets filling his mind. But with that power came a deep sadness. A mourning for the life he had left behind, for the future he would never have. The spirit stepped back, its form fading into the shadows once more, leaving Mike alone in the clearing. The forest was silent, but it was no longer menacing. It was his domain now, a place he was bound to protect for eternity. As he took his first steps into his new role, he felt a strange sense of peace. Sarah was safe, and he had done what he had to do. The price had been high, but it was one he was willing to pay. The forest, once a place of fear and mystery, had become his home. Mike, now the guardian, would ensure that the ancient pact was upheld, that the balance between the human world and the spirit world was maintained. And though his life as he had known it was over, the memory of Sarah's safety, her freedom, would be enough to sustain him through the long, endless years ahead. As Mike opened his eyes, the first thing he noticed was the forest, the way it seemed more alive, more vibrant than he had ever experienced before. Trees towered above him, their branches swaying gently in the wind, and the earth beneath him pulsed with energy. He could feel every root, every leaf, every creature that called the forest home. Transformation was complete. He was no longer just a man. He was one with the forest, the new guardian, bound to protect it for eternity. The change had been both subtle and profound. Mike could sense the presence of the forest spirit within him, guiding his thoughts, merging its ancient knowledge with his own. Memories of his former life were still there, but they felt distant, like echoes of a past that no longer held any sway over him. Pain of leaving Sarah behind was muted by the overwhelming connection he now had with the natural world. He could feel her presence, a soft, lingering warmth that reminded him of why he had made this choice. As he moved through the forest, it was as though the trees bent slightly toward him, acknowledging their new guardian. The animals watched him without fear, recognizing him as a protector rather than a threat. He walked with a purpose he had never felt before, his steps light and sure, as if the forest itself was guiding him along a path only he could see. Power that coursed through him was intoxicating, yet he wielded it with a calm, measured control. Everywhere he looked, Mike saw life, vibrant, pulsing life that he was now a part of. He could hear the rustling of leaves as though they were whispering secrets to him, and the calls of the birds felt like messages only he could understand. The forest was no longer just a place. It was a living entity, and he was its heart, soul. He felt a deep, abiding peace, a sense of belonging that he had never known in his previous life. But with this peace came a responsibility that weighed heavily on him. The spirit had chosen him not just to protect the forest, but to maintain the balance between the human world and the spirit world. It was a delicate equilibrium, one that required constant vigilance and wisdom. Mike knew that the forest would always be under threat, from those who sought to exploit it, from forces that sought to disrupt the natural order. It was his duty to ensure that those threats were kept at bay. The forest remained a sanctuary. As the days turned into weeks, Mike grew more attuned to his new role. He could sense the tiniest shifts in the environment, the way the air changed just before a storm, the way the earth trembled when something disturbed the natural order. He learned to communicate with the spirit, to draw on its vast reservoir of knowledge. Together they were a formidable force, guardians of a world that few humans even knew existed. Yet, despite his new life, there was still a part of Mike that longed for Sarah. He would often find himself standing at the edge of the forest, looking out toward the world he had left behind. He wondered how she was, if she had moved on, if she ever thought of him. Spirit within him understood his longing but reminded him of his duty, of the promise he had made. And so, with a heavy heart, Mike would turn back into the forest, knowing that his place was here now, among the trees and the shadows. In time, Mike found solace in his new existence. He discovered that the forest held more than just the memories of his past life. It held the promise of something greater. As the guardian, he had the power to shape the future, to ensure that the forest remained a place of beauty and wonder for generations to come. He was no longer just a man. He was a part of something much larger, a force of nature that would endure long after his human life would have ended. One day, as Mike was patrolling the forest, he felt a familiar presence, a warmth that filled him with a sense of joy and peace. He followed it to a quiet glade where the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow on the earth. There, standing in the light, was Sarah. She was not the same as he remembered her. It was more ethereal, a spirit now, just as he was, but her smile was the same, and it filled him with a happiness he had not felt since the day he lost her. Sarah approached him, her form shimmering in the light. She spoke without words, her thoughts merging with his. She told him that she had found peace. She was proud of the choice he had made. They stood together in the glade, two spirits bound by a love that had transcended their human forms. Mike knew then that he had not truly lost her. She had been with him all along, guiding him, supporting him in his new role as guardian. As the sun set and the shadows lengthened, Mike and Sarah walked together through the forest, their spirits intertwined. Transformation that had once felt like a sacrifice now felt like a gift. Chance to be a part of something eternal. Forest was their home, their sanctuary, and they would protect it together, for as long as the trees stood and the earth endured. Mike had found his place in the world, a place where he could be both a protector and a part of the natural order. The transformation was complete, and with Sarah by his side, he knew that he could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The forest, with all its mysteries and wonders, was theirs to guard, and they would do so with all the strength and love that had brought them to this point. The guardian and the spirit, together at last at peace in their eternal home. It was a day like any other, or so I thought. I was walking down the hallway of my high school, heading to my next class, and I saw her, Miss Thompson, my English teacher. She was hard to miss, with her bright orange outfit that stood out like a beacon among the sea of drab uniforms. I waved and called out to her, but she just kept walking, her eyes straight ahead, as if she didn't see me. It was odd, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe she was lost in thought, or maybe she just didn't hear me. The rest of the day passed uneventfully, but that brief encounter kept nagging at the back of my mind. Miss Thompson wasn't the type to ignore her students. And that outfit, well, it wasn't exactly her style. She usually dressed in muted tones, nothing as bold as the orange she'd been wearing. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I didn't have time to dwell on it. Classes, homework, and the usual teenage drama kept me busy. It wasn't until the end of the day that things got truly strange. I was heading to the library when I saw Miss Thompson again, this time in her usual muted outfit, a dark green cardigan and brown slacks. She was chatting with another teacher, laughing at something they had said. My stomach dropped as I realized that this was the real Miss Thompson, and that whoever, or whatever I had seen earlier wasn't her. I approached them cautiously, my mind racing with possibilities. "Miss Thompson," they said, my voice tinged with unease. "I saw you earlier in the hallway. You were wearing orange, but now..." My words trailed off as I searched her face for any sign that she knew what I was talking about. She frowned, confusion clouding her feature. "Orange? No, I haven't worn anything like that today. Are you sure it was me?" Her tone was light, but I could see a flicker of concern in her eyes. I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Yeah, I'm sure. You were walking down the hallway, and I waved at you. But you didn't respond, just kept walking." Miss Thompson exchanged a glance with the other teacher, who shrugged, clearly just as baffled. "That's strange," she said slowly, her frown deepening. "I've been in meetings all afternoon. I haven't even been near that hallway." I spent the next few weeks on edge, constantly looking over my shoulder, expecting the doppelganger to appear at any moment. But as time passed and nothing more happened, I began to relax. Maybe it was over, I told myself. Maybe the doppelganger had moved on, or maybe it had never been real in the first place. But deep down, I knew that it wasn't something I could simply forget. The encounter had left a mark on me, a chilling reminder that there are things in this world we may never fully understand. Even now, I sometimes catch myself glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see that bright orange outfit standing in the shadows. The memory of those encounters still sends a shiver down my spine, a reminder that not everything is as it seems. The doppelganger, whether real or imagined, had left an indelible impression on me, one that I doubt I'll ever shake. It started out like any other summer night, hot, humid, and full of the sounds of cicadas and distant traffic. I was spending the evening at a friend's house, a small suburban place with a backyard pool. We'd been swimming, laughing, and just enjoying the warm weather when I noticed something strange. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a little girl standing by the edge of the pool. She was dressed in an old-fashioned white dress, her hair hanging in damp curls around her face. At first, I thought she was a neighbor's child, but something about her was off. I turned to get a better look, but she was gone, as if she had vanished into thin air. My friends were still chatting, oblivious to what I'd seen. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I didn't say anything. It was probably just a trick of the light, I told myself. Or maybe the heat was playing with my mind. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The rest of the evening passed uneventfully, but the image of the little girl lingered in my mind. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I found myself lying in bed, unable to sleep. The room was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of the street lamp outside. As I drifted between wakefulness and sleep, I suddenly felt a heavy weight on my chest, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. Panic surged through me as I tried to move, but my body was frozen, paralyzed by some unseen force. I could hear a low, rumbling sound, like a deep growl, resonating in the room. My heart pounded in my chest as I struggled to break free from the invisible hold. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A dark figure standing in the corner of the room, its form indistinct but menacing. The figure seemed to pulsate with a chilling energy, its presence suffocating. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The paralysis held me in its grip for what felt like an eternity. Finally, as if a switch had been flipped, the weight lifted, and I could move again. I bolted upright, gasping for air, my heart racing. The dark figure was gone, and the room was silent once more. I sat there in the darkness, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it a nightmare? Sleep paralysis? Or had I just experienced something far more sinister? I spent the rest of the night wide awake, too afraid to close my eyes. The memory of the dark figure and the feeling of being trapped under its weight haunted me. The next morning, I tried to convince myself that it was just a bad dream, but the fear still lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. I couldn't help but think about the little girl I'd seen by the pool earlier. Was there a connection? Was she somehow tied to the dark figure that had visited me in the night? One evening, while sitting on my bed, I saw a shadow move across the wall. Even though there was no one else in the room, it was a brief flicker, but it was enough to send me into a panic. I called my friend, the one whose house I'd been at when I first saw the little girl, and finally told her everything. To my surprise, she wasn't skeptical. Instead, she listened intently, her voice tinged with concern. She told me that I wasn't the first to experience something strange at her house. Over the years, her family had noticed odd things. Doors opening on their own, strange cold spots, and even sightings of a little girl in a white dress. They had always chalked it up to the house's age, but now she wasn't so sure. The realization that this wasn't all in my head was both comforting and terrifying. We decided to do some research on the house and the surrounding area. What we found sent chills down our spines. The land the house was built on had once been part of an old estate, long since demolished. The estate had belonged to a wealthy family, and there were rumors that a young girl had drowned in the estate's pool under mysterious circumstances. The description of the girl matched what I had seen, and it was believed that her spirit still lingered, unable to move on. Armed with this knowledge, my friend and I decided to perform a cleansing ritual, hoping to give the little girl's spirit the peace it needed. We gathered sage, candles, and some other supplies, and one night, we went through the house, burning the sage and saying prayers. The atmosphere in the house felt heavy, as if the very walls were holding their breath. But as we moved from room to room, the air began to lighten, and the sense of dread that had hung over me for weeks started to dissipate. After the ritual, the strange occurrences stopped. Whispers, the moving objects, the dark figure in the corner of my room, they were all gone. The house felt different, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. I never saw the little girl by the pool again, and the sleep paralysis didn't return. It was as if we had finally helped her find peace, allowing her to move on from whatever had been keeping her here. Even though the fear has faded, the experience left a lasting impression on me. It taught me that there are forces in this world that we may never fully understand, and that sometimes those forces reach out to us in ways that are both chilling and haunting. I still think about the little girl from time to time, wondering if she found the peace she was looking for. And though I hope never to experience anything like that again, I'll always remember that summer night when the veil between this world and the next seemed just a little bit thinner. When my family decided to go on a camping trip near some old Native American burial grounds, I was both excited and a little apprehensive. The area was steeped in history, and while it promised to be a beautiful and serene spot, there was something about it that gave me pause. My parents assured me that it was just an old legend, nothing to worry about. But as we set up camp near the edge of the burial grounds, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were intruding on something sacred, something that didn't want to be disturbed. First night was peaceful enough. We sat around the campfire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories, the sounds of the forest providing a soothing backdrop. But as the fire died down and the night grew darker, the atmosphere began to change. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in a way that sounded almost like whispering voices. I glanced around, but there was nothing out of the ordinary, just the shadows cast by the firelight, flickering and dancing among the trees. As I lay in my tent that night, the wind continued to howl outside, carrying with it the faint sound of drums, deep, rhythmic beats that seemed to echo from the burial ground. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but the sound grew louder, more insistent. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened, my mind racing with possibilities. Were we really hearing the drums of long-departed spirits? I wanted to wake my parents, but something held me back. Maybe fear, or maybe a deep respect for whatever was out there. The next morning, I mentioned the drums to my parents, but they dismissed it as the wind playing tricks on me. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The burial grounds seemed to loom over our campsite, the ancient stones marking the graves of those who had passed long before us. I found myself glancing in that direction more often than I liked, half expecting to see a figure standing there, watching us with silent, accusing eyes. That evening, as we prepared dinner, my younger sister wandered off toward the burial ground. I didn't notice at first, but when I realized she was gone, panic set in. We called her name, our voices echoing through the trees, but there was no response. My parents and I split up to search for her, my heart pounding with fear. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the forest floor, and the sense of unease that had been building since we arrived now surged to the forefront. As I neared the burial grounds, I heard my sister's voice, soft, almost a whisper, coming from somewhere ahead. Relief flooded through me as I ran toward the sound, but when I reached the edge of the clearing, I stopped short. My sister was standing in the center of the burial grounds, her back to me, staring at something I couldn't see. The air was thick with tension, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I called out to her. She turned slowly, her eyes wide and unfocused, as if she were in a trance. My stomach churned with fear as I approached her, my steps hesitant. When I reached her, I gently shook her shoulder, trying to snap her out of whatever spell she was under. It took a moment, but finally she blinked and looked up at me, confusion clouding her face. "What are we doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we needed to get out of there, fast. I took her hand and led her back to the campsite, my mind racing with what I had just witnessed. My parents were relieved to see us, but when I told them what had happened, they exchanged uneasy glances. Something wasn't right, and we all knew it. The burial grounds, once just a curiosity, had become a source of dread, a place we no longer wanted to be near. That night, the wind returned, howling through the trees with a fury that seemed almost unnatural. The drumming started again, louder this time, accompanied by the sound of voices, low, murmuring voices that seemed to rise and fall with the rhythm of the drums. I lay in my tent, terrified, listening to the cacophony outside, feeling as though the very earth beneath me was alive with the energy of the spirit. My sister clung to me, her small body shaking with fear. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, the voices stopped abruptly, leaving behind an eerie silence that was even more unnerving. I lay there, holding my breath, waiting for something, anything to happen. But the night passed without incident, and when morning came, the forest was calm and still, as if nothing had happened at all. But we all knew better. The burial grounds had made their presence known, and we were not welcome. We packed up quickly that morning, eager to leave the area behind. As we drove away, couldn't resist one last glance at the burial ground. The ancient stones stood silent, bathed in the golden light of dawn, but the memory of the previous night lingered like a shadow over my thoughts. I didn't know what we had experienced, whether it was the spirits of those long dead or something else entirely, but I knew that I would never forget it. Even now, years later, the memory of that camping trip sends chills down my spine. The drumming, the voices, the way my sister seemed to fall under a spell, it all felt too real to dismiss as a trick of the imagination. The experience taught me a deep respect for the unknown, for the power of places steeped in history and mystery. And though I've been camping many times since, I've never returned to that spot, and I never will. Forest, the burial grounds, the spirits, they all remain a part of me. A haunting reminder of that summer when the veil between the living and the dead seemed just a little bit thinner. And while the fear has faded, a lesson remains, guiding me to tread carefully in places where the past still lingers, where the echoes of those who came before us can still be heard in the wind.